All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of My Third Eye. I have the luxury of having Mick and Vlynn from the Patriot Party Podcast come on, and we're going to dive into a little of their backstory. I had the pleasure and great honor to co-host, fill in for Mick a couple days on their podcast a week or so ago, and had great pleasure and fun doing it. So, Mick, Vlynn, welcome back from your trip. I hope everything is going good down there, considering the storm that went through Florida and your area, and hopefully everything is still standing.
Yeah, thank you. It actually it missed us. Oh, there we go. Thank you, babe. I turn my audio off. Yes, the storm actually missed us entirely. So I spent 2 days getting ready for everything. You're such a wonderful man. I spent 2 days, while Mick was already in Oregon and then Vegas, I was running around, battening down the hatches, shoveling compost into big contractor bags and putting it around the chicken coop and getting bags of potting soil and putting it around the back of the house and, picking up anything that could fly around and all that stuff and setting up a brand new 100-gallon rainwater barrel collector thingy, right? It has about an inch of water in it.
Oh man. Well, if you wouldn't have done any of that, you would have been destroyed.
I know, absolutely. But yeah, so it is what it is. But
I have a theory to that.
What's that? I do too, actually, because I firmly believe. Now we have 2 children. We have a 10-year-old boy and a 15-year-old boy, and our 10-year-old is kind of our miracle child. Okay. And he is highly empathic, very intuitive. He's kind of a medium and I've actually seen him restore a soul to a body for a period of time. It was quite amazing. But he came and said to me on Monday, I left on Wednesday, and he was like, "Mom, are you going to drive to Vegas?" And I was like, it's kind of looking that way. And he goes, "Good, you should drive." I was like, why is that? He goes, because we need you back. And if you fly, you're not coming back. And I was like, oh, okay, then I guess I'm driving. He's like, yeah, God sent the storm this way to force you to drive. And I was like, well, hopefully if God sent the storm to force me to drive, he won't send it to destroy the house as well. Cause that would kind of be counterintuitive, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So we lucked out all the way around. What's your theory, babe?
I don't even remember. Doesn't matter.
Oh.
No. Oh. Well, so far, every time that I've been here and a hurricane's been inbound, it's hit. Every time I haven't been here, nothing. As if this shit magnet has to be right here for it to hit.
That's true.
I'm a pretty big shit magnet. I've got that going for me. It's one of the things I got going for me.
Yeah.
I'm a soul slut. I'm a fucking shit magnet. What else? Tweedledee, Tweedledum. I don't know.
I mean, You're kind of retarded, but
this is all very fucking true.
Look, here's the thing.
Fine. Listen,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
Same here.
I really am.
I like to go full on retard sometimes.
Yeah.
Never go full retard. Never.
It's fun once in a while.
It is. It's okay. But you can't go full retard.
Yeah. He went full retard.
Yeah, it's a rough one. So how far back do you want to go?
We can start at the beginning if you want, or however far back you guys want to go, because this is your story and you're in a complete judgment-free zone. So whatever you guys want to share and divulge.
Well, what has been asked, I guess.
Well, okay. So Mick and I essentially grew up together, right? His mother was my 5th grade teacher. The first time we met, I was 10 and he was 12. And he had come on a field trip with us down to the Statue of Liberty. This was my first experience with the Mandela effect as well. And I didn't even know it at the time because I remember very distinctly that, well, first off, his mother had assigned us a project to build a house, proportionate out of foam board, like correct architectural, etc. Had to be mathematically accurate and stand on its own. And in doing so, I managed to slice my thumb open with an X-Acto knife. In fact, I still have a good scar on that. But I had nasty stitches in my thumb. I mean, big black stitches, and it was all wrapped up in gauze and whatnot. And I could take the covering off real easy. And we're on the bus on the way down. It's real bumpy, and it's, they don't have seatbelts or anything like that. This is the 80s. Like, no one gave a fuck. And I'm sitting with my friend Chris, who's turned into a big fucking libtard, and he's probably going to die from the jab here soon. But anyway,
Who?
Chris Sauer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, no way.
Yeah. Anyway.
Marty Sauer's kid?
Yeah. Anyway.
No way.
Yeah. Anyway, so
he went libtardy?
Yeah, he went total libtarded. But it's a whole nother story. So I'm sitting with him, and Mick's sitting right in front of me on the bus, and I take the covering off my finger, and I'm waving those nasty stitches in his face, and he throws up because it's so gross, right? And we're laughing at it. We think this is the funniest shit ever. And we get down to the Statue of Liberty, and I remember distinctly that we were in the museum, and actually we looked up some of his ancestors, and we looked up some of my ancestors, and then we took the elevator directly up to the Statue of Liberty. On Ellis Island. Okay. He does not remember it that way. He remembers us taking, what was it, the boat or the bridge? We
went on a boat. We went into Ellis Island first.
At the museum.
And it's the great big glass museum. It's got all the entrance. I actually went and looked for when my father came across. That's my grandmother, actually. My grandmother and my father and my aunt. And the first time they crossed.
No, your grandfather, because he died on the way. Your grandmother was still in Ireland. She came over later.
Or my grandfather. Yeah.
Your grandfather. Yeah.
So we went to look for that. We found that. They actually found it for me. They showed us where they signed in. I was like, holy shit. It's crazy when you look at that. And then they were like one of the last couple pages in there. I was like, holy fuck, before they shut Ellis Island down. But it's still crazy to think that that's the way it was back then.
And
then we walked out of the building, and you walked to a dock. You boarded a ferry. The ferry took you over to Liberty Island. Liberty Island, you got off the ferry. You walked around the corner. You walked right up, and you walked right up into the base of the statue. And in the base of the statue, it goes over the whole history of the construction of the statue and everything else.
Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he remembers it being on a different island. So I was actually listening to a podcast in 2020. I was listening to Nick Hinton on, I think he was on No Mercy. And he started talking about how the Statue of Liberty is not on Ellis Island, it's on Liberty Island. And I was like, no fucking way. So I called him and I asked him, and he was like, no, we took a boat. And I was like, and I hung up on him. I was like, motherfucker. So then I called his mother and I was like, Mom, where's the Statue of Liberty? And she goes, actually, the first time I called him first, and I was like, hey babe, where's the Statue of Liberty? He goes, New York City. I'm like, no, motherfucker. Are you fucking kidding me? Seriously. Like, where's the Statue of Liberty? He's like, it's on Liberty Island. And I was like, no, it's not. It's on Ellis Island. He was like, yeah, no. Don't you remember on that field trip, we took a boat from Ellis Island to Liberty Island? And I was like, no, we didn't. Shut up. And I hung up on him. And then I called his mother and I was like, Mom, I was like, where's the Statue of Liberty? And she goes, it's in New York City. And I was like, you fucking kidding me? Come on, Mom. Like, seriously, where in New York City? And she was like, it's on an island. What island is it? And I said Ellis Island, and she goes, no, it's on a different island. And I said Liberty Island, and she goes, yeah. And I was like, okay, how did we get there? And she goes, oh, that's easy. We took a bridge, a walkway. We walked across from Ellis Island to Liberty Island. It's like right next door. And I was like, Very interesting.
There was
Thank you, Mom.
in later years.
Well, she remembered from that field trip that we took a bridge across, and he remembered that we took a boat across. And then I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, where's the Statue of Liberty?
New York City.
And she
New York
said,
City.
New York City. And I was like, seriously, don't make me fucking hang up on you right now. She's like, what? And I was like, okay, you worked right there. Tell me, is the Statue of Liberty on the same island as the museum, or is it on a different island? She goes, no, it's on the same island. You go into the museum and then you take an elevator right up to the Statue of Liberty. And I was like, thank you. So my mom and I remember it one way, and his mom and he remembered it a different way.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
And in school, I always was taught that the Statue of Liberty was on Ellis Island.
No.
But now it's on now in this timeline, it's on Ellis Island. So
Liberty Island.
No. On this timeline,
it's in this timeline. It's on Liberty Island. My apologies.
Ellis Island is a separate island altogether because Ellis Island is 3 times the size of Liberty Island. Liberty Island is only for the statue. The statue itself is the only thing on Liberty Island.
I gotcha. Anyway, and what I remember, it was on Ellis Island. So,
remember until they widened the entrance to the Hudson there. That was the reason that they had that part. They were only just started to build that walkway over from Ellis Island to Liberty Island, because that walkway is all new, because they weren't going to do that because they weren't going to widen the entrance to the Hudson.
Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I remember it being on one island. You remember it being on a different island.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boat or walkway is irrelevant.
It's a separate island.
Anyway. So, but I went to a different school than he did. He just came on that field trip with us because his mom was my teacher. And then fast forward sophomore year in high school, my mom got remarried to a guy that lived in the same town as him. And at first she let me live in our old house by myself. And then she quickly realized that was a very bad idea. So she yanked me out of school like 3/4 of the way through the school year and plopped my ass into school with him. And so I remember that very beginning, I think I had one friend there, and she had band first period. And so I went to visit her because I didn't have a first period class. I always made sure as much as possible to have first period free because I was always late. So that way I wouldn't be in trouble. So I'd pop into band class to see her because they didn't fucking do anything. It's band class, right?
Right.
And everybody would just be making fun of him. And I was like, ooh, this is fun. And I vaguely remembered him, and I was like, oh, this is a fun bandwagon to jump on. So I started making fun of him, and I got no reaction out of him whatsoever. He was like stone face cold all the time, and it pissed me off so much. I could not get a rise out of him. So the very last day of school, my sophomore year, his junior year, I walked in to band class, and mind you, he was like, his shoulders are about half the size they are now, but his head was the same size. And he had this shock of platinum blonde hair that just stood up all over the place. So we called him Bobblehead Mick. Okay.
Oh my God.
Kind of ridiculous.
I want to rock.
So I walk into band class the last day of school, and he just lets loose on me with everything that he'd been holding up for months. And it was nasty. Like, he was vile. And I was so excited that I got a rise out of him that I just started laughing so hard. I was like literally rolling on the floor laughing. Like, it was hysterical. I didn't even care what he said. I was just so happy I got a rise out of him. And then we had a lot of mutual friends, and one of our mutual friends mutually pissed us off. And so then we became friends. And, but that was it. Just friends. I gave him my car, which was a really old piece of shit. It was a 79 Chevy Malibu. This thing was hardcore. Like, I sent away to Maine for plates because Maine doesn't give a shit. You just send them a check and they send you license plates. And you couldn't register it anywhere else because the emissions in the engine were all plugged off, and you didn't know how fast you were going because the speedometer set at 0 all the time. And you could lock the doors, but you couldn't unlock them, so it's kind of pointless. You could open the trunk and see the ground, so we put a 4x4 on there so that shit didn't fall out, and then we tied the bumper on with bungee cord and duct tape and wire hanger.
Oh, the good old days, right?
Yeah. And the previous owner had spray painted it red in the sun, so it was like baked on peeling brick red, and the inside was fluorescent fuzzy purple. So we put black fuzzy seat covers over it, and we had fluorescent purple fuzzy dice in the windshield just to keep the theme going.
The ambiance.
Yeah. And we used to play mailbox baseball with it and leave the baseball bat at home because this thing was such a fucking tank. It just didn't matter. And you could not dent this car. I went to the tree with it on purpose, and it dented the shit out of the tree and didn't even put a scratch in the car. But when I went to college, I couldn't take it with me. So I gave it to him because he deferred from the Army for a year to go to college, which didn't last very long. And he ended up destroying a couple other cars. Oh, it also had a big hole. The biggest part, it had a big hole in the brake cylinder. So it was like air brakes on a truck, and you had to pump them starting like a mile out. Didn't stop very well. It was really heavy, so it didn't stop very well anyway. And it was really old, so it didn't stop very well anyway. So he destroyed a couple cars, and our dads got together and gave the car away. And he didn't have the balls to tell me. So I came home from Christmas break from college, and he wouldn't answer my calls. And so I showed up at a party at a mutual friend's house.
No. Mind you, at the time that she was calling me, I was in the Army, and I wasn't getting phone calls.
No, he wasn't answering my calls.
We didn't have cell phones then.
Yeah,
exactly.
He couldn't call me before he left to tell me that my car was gone. Right? No. Anyway, so he was home for Christmas and I was home for Christmas, and we show up at this party together, and he's playing beer pong in the driveway, and I'm so pissed that I just start screaming and yelling and carrying on, and he goes,
"No, I wasn't playing beer pong.
Oh, you're doing keg stands."
Well, we were just standing there.
No, you were definitely doing keg
stands.
stands. Yes.
At one point.
Anyway, so I start carrying on. Little do I know that he's tripping on acid. So all he sees is a dragon with flames coming out of its head, right? And I have no reaction again. I'm getting no reaction out of him whatsoever, and I'm so pissed off. Like, we've reverted back to when I first met him, that I kicked him square in the balls, and I was like, "Yeah, I bet I'm getting a fucking reaction out of you now, aren't I?" I left him crying in the driveway. And the next time I heard from him was when he sent me an invitation to his wedding. That didn't go over very well. So, yeah. And then the next time I heard from him was when he was getting divorced. And then shortly thereafter, he fucked up his noggin real bad. We ended up getting married. Like, just that the ink on his divorce papers had just barely dried. The ink on her divorce papers weren't dry when she got remarried. So, at least we waited like 4 or 5 months or whatever before we got married. And then he got all fucked up in the head right after that. Like, he deployed 3 weeks after we got married, and then he hit his head so hard on the windshields when he got hit an IED that he detached the capillaries from a major artery in his corpus callosum, and had an arterial venous malformation, and ended up having to have multiple brain surgeries where they split the two sides of his brain in half. So now he can use them independent of each other, which is really, really interesting.
So like, are you ambidextrous now?
Actual side, and one is the conspiracy side. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I can shoot with both hands.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can shoot left or right, and I have no differential.
But the doctors told me, so when he went for the initial surgery, when he hit his head in February. He deployed in January, hit his head in February. He came home in July, and he first night had a grand mal seizure, and I was like, "What the fuck?" And my parents had come to see him, and we, call ambulance, he goes to the hospital, blah blah blah. They do all the tests, and And I emailed his colonel and I was like, yeah, he's not coming back. He's fucked up in the head. And he was like, you can't make that decision, blah, blah, blah. And I called him and I went off and I was like, how long has he been having seizures for? I understand that you gave him a Palm Pilot when he was having memory issues. Do you understand that the doctors said that if he is not treated immediately, he's going to be dead in 2 weeks? Do you want his blood on your hand on top of the other soldiers that you've killed in this last deployment? Oh, I went off. And he was like, I didn't realize it was that bad. And I was like, well, maybe you should pay better fucking attention to your head of personal security because he's literally bleeding inside of his brain and he needs brain surgery. And maybe if this had happened 6 months ago, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in right now. But no, he's not fucking coming back to you so that he can die on your watch. He's not dying on my watch. That's for damn sure. You can fuck off. And that's what I told the highest ranking officer in Iraq at the time.
I'm glad I'm glad I was not your internet provider.
So
it's an inside joke, guys. You have to listen to their show to get that.
Oh yeah. So anyway,
This big. He made it feel this big.
So they initially sent him because we're here in Georgia, and he had the initial test at Fort Stewart, but he was based at Fort Irwin, so they sent him to California, and they wanted to gamma knife radiation on his head, and I was like, no, not bad.
No. You weren't like that.
No,
I looked at the doctor and I said, are you fucking kidding me? I was like, what? Tell me about which part of this that makes any bit of sense to you, okay? Have you ever shined a flashlight into a microscope before and then watched the beam on the bit of a black background? That beam just continues through and it expands, it gets wider. I said, so that's pretty much what you're doing with a particle beam of radiation. So tell me something. Where at that point do I not get brain cancer?
Right.
I mean, honestly.
So I called his dad because his dad is a general, retired, but still a general. So, and I was like, we need to get him moved, find the best neurosurgeon in the country. I don't care if it's military or civilian. Well, it so happens that the best neurosurgeon in the country is in the military, or was. He's retired now. And he was at Walter Reed. And so we got him transferred and we got his care taken over. And this doctor was like, no, we're not going to do fucking gamma knife radiation. Those California is full of fruits and nuts. And I was like, literally. Yeah, that's about right. So he's like, we're going to start with an embolization. I said, okay, what's that? So basically we're going to run a microcatheter from the femoral artery in his leg all the way up to his brain. And we're going to use what I like to describe as Bondo for the brain. And we're going to plug off each of the holes where the capillaries have detached from the artery. And hopefully we're going to get it all. And I was like, okay. And I said, well, how do you know if you get it all or if you don't? He said, well, afterwards, we're going to do a series of cranial angiograms where basically they inject dye into his brain and see if it's bleeding out.
Contrast.
Someplace. Yeah. Contrast. See if it's bleeding anywhere. It's like it's very much, they do the same thing in your heart. But
it's like a heavy iodine.
This is for the brain. So he's like, we'll do a series of those.
I had like a battery taste in my mouth after I was done.
He's like, we'll do one a month for 6 months, and if nothing happens, that if he doesn't show any evidence of bleeding, then he'll be good. I was like, okay. So they did that.
Now, mind you, I was pissed.
Mm-hmm. So they did that, and he woke up and he was like, nope, they didn't get it all. I still hear bubbles in my head. And I was like, well, I mean, they're pretty confident they got it all, but we'll see what happens. We'll let them do their tests and whatnot. And then I got pregnant, and they went through the 6 angiograms, and on the 6th one, they were like, nope, he's still bleeding out into his head. So we're gonna have to do a craniotomy. I was like, okay. So what does this look like? Where are we at? Well, doing a craniotomy in the corpus callosum, there's a 50-50 shot he's going to make it off the table. And now, mind you, I was 7 months pregnant at this point. Okay. I was not taking any bullshit from anyone. Like, you don't fucking beat around the bush. Don't sugarcoat anything. Just tell it to me like it is. Cause I'm not in any mood for any kind of bullshit. Like my bullshit meter is like, top level. So I'm like, just give it to me straight. He's like, all right, 50-50 shot. He makes it off the table. It's like, okay, so he's going to make it off the table. What happens next? Well, I said, most likely he'll be a vegetable. He'll never walk again. Probably won't remember who you are. He'll be like a stroke patient, combined with, essentially an invalid. And 85% chance he'll be dead in 5 years. And I was like, okay, so where are you getting that number? He said, well, we've been doing the surgery for 5 years and everyone we've done it to is dead.
Oh,
I said, okay.
fuck.
I said, where'd you get the 15%? They said, hope. I said, okay, I'll take that. Prayer. I'll take that. Okay. I said, you do what you do and I'll do what I do and we'll see who wins. Cause I always win. Just let you know. I always win. I always win. And here we are almost 17 years later. And obviously he remembers me and he walks and talks and, although we can't feel his leg, they've written him up in the New England Journal of Medicine and, that, we go to see his doctors every once in a while just to be like, hey, look, he's still alive. And they're like, holy shit. But we realized along the way, especially recently, that the reason that he's still alive, because he's died many times. In fact, he stayed in the Army and went special forces and, killed a whole bunch of motherfuckers and died, I don't know, 5 or 6 times again after that. He's alive because he has a purpose. And it's not his time. It is most definitely not his time. He has to fulfill that purpose before he's allowed to go anywhere. So, and we joke that, the devil's scared of him and God doesn't want him. And so the only way he's going to die is if I kill him, which I've come close occasionally, but I've yet to actually go through with it. Benadryl's an amazing thing. So.
You are a walking miracle.
Yes, he is.
We got a lot of pineapple.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take.
Exactly. That's his kryptonite is pineapple. So it's pretty funny.
So when you were going through all that, Meg, and like you said, at one point you could still hear the bubbles in your head. Obviously, that's the blood pumping out and what have you. At any time, did you ever feel like there was no chance for you, or did you just know I'm going to be okay? Like, because
no, I just said I was going to be okay. I just said, no, this is nothing. It's not a big deal. It's just a headache. Come on, fix it. Let's go. Okay. It was really funny. I remember the day that we were going in for the big one where they were going to finally cut the fucking thing out of me. And,
which was Halloween.
Dr. Bell,
who just thereabouts. I think it was like October 30th.
He was one of my favorite dudes. Great guy. Him and I got along.
And he was a Navy doctor, which was funny because it was when Walter Reed and Bethesda were merging. So neurosurgery had already moved to Bethesda.
So we're sitting there, and it was back in the day when Bethesda was the shit. It was the hospital to be at. The Navy nurses, wow. I swear to God,
drunk ones
they hire based on looks, and
and pray for brains, and their prayers don't work very well.
Wow, because there were some lookers.
They're fucking retarded.
But we had our good nurses, we had our bad nurses.
I got the bad ones fired.
Yes, but like anything else, though, it was. When I came out of all of it, it was the one thing I always took from it I always remember that I'll never forget is I went to sleep. I remember the pain. That was the worst. I had so much. I just remember constantly having a headache. I don't remember a day. There was almost 2 years in a row. I bought so much Aleve that it became like noticeable. Like we were noticing transactions specifically just for Aleve.
And he was pissing blood.
Oh,
And it was like, hey, you're like, we went to the doctors. We were hoping for anything.
Well, and they had originally put him on Oxycontin, and that just real quick, he flushed that shit down the toilet. He was like, no, I'm not playing that game.
Yeah, the second round was a little bit more difficult, but it was just, the whole point of it was like, I was like, yeah, just isn't working. There's nothing they can give me. I couldn't sleep. I was sleeping maybe 1-2 hours a night.
And the nightmares were horrible.
Everything just kind of hit at once. It was all just a compression of 9 years that went by like that. And all of a sudden I was like, fuck. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And when it hit, it was, memory wise, I mean, we figured out 11 years roughly. I can't remember.
So he
really anything from about 8th grade through
my
second year in the Army.
He doesn't remember our wedding. He doesn't remember he doesn't remember his first like 3 or 4 deployments. But however, he doesn't actively remember them, but there was a long period of time there, and it took us a while to get through all these memories. But something would trigger him, and it could be anything. It could be a commercial. It could be something he was reading.
a smell.
Could be a smell, something I said, something he heard. I mean, it could be anything. And it would trigger him, and I called it a fugue state. Excuse me. And he would literally, he'd be in the middle of a sentence. We'd be in the middle of a conversation, or we'd be watching a movie or something. And he would drop out, and he would go into a memory, and he would relive the entire thing. But this time he would relive it with all of the emotion that he had suppressed when he was initially there. And then as soon as he was done, he would snap back out of it, and he would go right back into whatever he was saying when he dropped into that fugue state, and he would have no memory of it whatsoever. So I became the keeper of his memories. And a lot of them were pretty horrific. I mean, they really are. And I have this thing where I remember pretty much everything. I have an eidetic memory. So my brain is like a filing cabinet, and I can file things away and recall them at will. Some things take a little bit longer than others, but I can recall pretty much anything. So those I like to file really dark and deep in there because they're pretty horrific. But, he went to a VA counselor, and they were like, can you tell me any of your memories? And he was like, you should call my wife.
Because I don't remember shit. Have you? Do you guys? I don't know if you guys watch many movies, but it's an older movie. It came out probably early 2000s. Somewhere in there. It was a movie called Memento, and that's kind of what your situation is kind of reminding me of. Like you didn't.
Backwards.
Yeah, working backwards, and you couldn't. The guy in the movie obviously would take Polaroid pictures and write in the moment, okay, this guy's a good guy or this guy's a bad guy. I mean, it wasn't to that extent. However, it's very similar to that. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't imagine just all this. Well, I can, because every now and again I'll be talking and I tart out and I'll be like, well, what the fuck was going on? You know what I mean? But I you know what I mean? I didn't have traumatic brain, injury like you did.
The crazy thing, like I have like a couple boxes like I can't get rid of. I just can't get rid of them. I know they have something to do with me before her, but I have no idea what. I don't want to get rid of them until I figure it out.
Gotcha.
And it's like this shit that I know what it is, and I should probably I know exactly why it's there, but I can't tell you why I have it. And I'm like, why do I have this? Because it's an odd thing. It's like one of those weird things, like, it's almost like my former self left my future self like a message,
A time capsule.
of sorts that I'll eventually understand. And I haven't figured it out, but I'm like, all right, this just doesn't make any sense because I've got all this. And I can't get rid of these 4 boxes. I don't know why. have this. We moved. I was like, nope, I'll take these. And I put these 4 boxes by myself into my truck. I was like, yep, they're going. Because they got to be there. Because I can't, it's an OCD thing. I've got to make sure that they're there.
But I say that our youngest son is our miracle baby because he was conceived and born after Mick's expiration date, after the doctors told me that he would, most likely be dead, that 5-year term. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to replan his funeral because his pallbearers keep dying on me. So
yeah,
that's a rough one. So, yeah.
I'll have a robot doing it eventually. Just one robot. Just pick my ass up and throw me in a grave.
Diggy.
But, I've come to realize or believe that the traumatic brain injury has a lot to do with the situation that we found ourselves in the past year and a month. Although maybe not so much because really Mick's been dealing with it his entire life. But
yeah, it became more intense after that.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yes.
So it's not to compare. So it would be kind of like how, okay, your youngest son is an empath. And in the last 3 years, I found out that I am one as well. But I always thought because I'd go places or whatever, I would chalk it up to I'm having anxiety attacks and I'm retarded or whatever. You know what I mean? And then you get linked to people on Telegram and through these different webs. All of a sudden, you meet these people and they start, hey, maybe you're this or maybe you're that. And it's like, all of a sudden you're like, you look back and you're like, so I've been dealing with this my whole life thinking it was one thing, but it's really something completely different. And that's kind of where Mick is now, is like, okay, I've dealt with this my whole life, but now I know kind of what it actually was my whole life. And now you can move forward to try and figure out where to move to next. You know what I mean? Because as an empath, I'm still, I'll be figuring that shit out to the day I die. You know what I mean? Because
absolutely
shit comes to you and you're just like, you can't place it. And then next thing you know, 2 or 3 days later, you're like, okay, I had a dream about this. And then you talk to somebody and they're like, yeah, this is what I saw when we were there. And it was like, well, I had a dream that 2 days before that's what I saw, but I didn't know it was going to relate to you. You know what I mean? So it just weird stuff.
Yeah, very, very much so. When you're
what is it? What is it that said? It's the uncommon connection amongst it all.
And when we were growing up, it was very anthema. Like you told people that you heard voices or you could astral project or you could see auras or whatever, or you could feel other people's emotions.
You didn't tell people that.
Or you could hear other people's thoughts. Or you could talk to animals. If you told anybody these things, they would put you in a fucking, mental.
You'd be in
a hospital, right? Yeah. Like that's it. They pump you so full of lithium and, give you electroshock therapy that you end up a fucking vegetable, right? When really it's a gift. So those of us that weren't driven crazy by it, because a lot of people were, for exactly that reason. Mm-hmm. We learned to hide it. But now I think our kids have the benefit of us trying to get rid of that stigma. Mm-hmm. Like I recognize my child as an empath. I see what he can do. Both of our children have gifts, although they're kind of opposite each other. They're very opposite each other. But we're able to help them develop it and control them from a younger age, mm-hmm. which hopefully will be beneficial to them in the future, and they won't be in the situation that we're in when they're adults saying, holy shit, like all of a sudden I I can do all these things and see all these things and feel all these things. And at the same time, I'm dealing with this whole other situation, and it's very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. You know what it also reminds me of is being a young kid. The X-Men were like one of my favorite comic books or cartoon to watch, whatever. And it was like, they're always going around and rounding up the mutants. Well, if you look at people that are kind of like what Mick is discovering about himself, or someone like me discovering, hey, you're an empath, this is what it is, or your child. Basically, if you look at it in a certain way, to others, we would be a mutant because we do have special powers. Do I think everybody has the potential to be an empath? Absolutely. It's just how far do you want to tap into it, or tell yourself, hey, you're not really crazy. You know what I mean? Like connections with animals. Like you were saying, we got a whole bunch of new chickens, and I walked in there, and my wife can go down there, and they were just like kind of being rude to her. You know what I mean? And I walked in, and it was just like, I carry like that calming ease, and I reached down and just picked up one of the new ones and just started petting. She goes, how do you do that? I said, I don't fucking know. I just do it. They know I bring a calm energy with me, but it's, I don't know. It's cool. If I'm a mutant, I love it.
My duck is like that. Blueberry. He'll let me, he likes to, have his breast scratched, and he'll kind of nibble on my hand while I do it. And, ducks really bond with you. They're very sweet, but I have a hate relationship with my satanic rooster, Peanut Butter. He's an evil little bitch, and he comes up and
he's a dick. He's not a bitch. He's a dick.
He's a dick.
He's protecting.
You should have named him Pineapple.
He's cock.
He is cock. He is a cock. And he's protecting all of his women, and I get it, but like, he was always my favorite chicken.
Yo,
and now he's like, bitches. Get the fuck out of my enclosure. Like, these are my girls. You are not allowed near them. He's like,
you ain't touching my sluts.
You put the food out. Now I'm done. Like, that's it. Get out.
You ain't touching my sluts.
So you are only good for food. Get the fuck out. You can't just stand here and hang out. You're not allowed.
Bitch, please.
But the dogs
I
especially have a relationship with the dogs and the cats. But I think cats are aliens personally.
Yeah, cats are different.
Cats are different.
I can agree.
Cats' purrs actually can heal.
Mm-hmm.
They have a healing effect, and cats naturally abscess any infection that they have, and then use
cats don't have a color
and vibration to heal it. Cats don't have a color.
They don't.
Interesting. Mick sees colors, auras on people, but in colors.
See, everybody asks me about that because I'll pick up on random colors. Like you and I could be talking on the phone and not see each other, and I can pick up on colors that are on you or around you or whatever, and everybody's like, oh, so you see auras. I'm like, no, I don't see auras. I just pick up on colors that are in the room or on a person or close to somebody.
I don't do that. I don't do it via audio. I do it via visual. If I can see you, it's not an aura. I don't know why people call it an aura.
Yeah.
It's a color.
Because it's the best way for people to understand what we're talking about.
It's a color that is emitted, like with your emotions and your energy comes a color. There's a color to it. For instance, they weren't too far off in Green Lantern, no matter how gay the movie was. It still is right on with the color. Hope is green. Truth is green. That's all part of the Green Lantern, so on and so forth. Yellow is fear. Black is like neutral. There's no, black is no color. It's like, and it's odd to not have a color. Every human emits a color.
Mm-hmm.
Blue, loyalty, red, love. Red can also be anger, depending on the color of red, depending on the shade. Red can be also embarrassment, again, depending on their shade. Whatever you think that color is, that's what you're going to see. So if you experience a color with a certain emotion, I can see it. Mm-hmm. So even before you start to speak. So it doesn't even matter whether I know you or not. I can see it. You walk up to me, I'm like, all right, I know you're a good guy, or nope, we're not going to have a conversation. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm just going to keep walking.
Right.
I'll pretend like you ain't there and we ain't even existing on the same realm or plane, because I know right now I don't need to kill anybody because I don't need to go to jail. A. And B, I'm pretty sure you don't want to die and you haven't made right with Jesus yet. So
See, and he uses the color thing as a lie detector as well, right? Like we got into a fight the other day and he wouldn't look at me because he didn't want to believe what I was saying. And then I made him look at me, and then the fight was over because he understood that I was telling him the truth. I just know, like, I know if someone's lying to me. Like I have an internal truth detector, and I cannot stand when someone lies to me. Like that's my cutoff. Like you don't lie to me, period. I will fucking cut you out of my life so fast. That's someone learned that last weekend. Yeah. Yeah. But I think everything, well, especially right now in this time that we're in, because I really think that we're coming up to the end times. And interesting enough, and they always, everyone always makes fun of me because I bring up Tim Pool in our podcast, just like I always talk about the Bongino blowjob, because he always likes to bring up Dan Bongino, right?
she gives the,
The
Tim Pool like a lot of puss.
I like it. But they were even discussing the other day, I think it was Tim Pool. Anyway, that was it the deep state trying to bring about revelations so that they can change the ending, or is this God doing it, or is it both? Is it the deep state doing it and God working through them, knowing that this was going to happen and the ending won't change anyway? Because I do think we're at that time, that time that the Bible speaks of in Revelations.
Well, they've been trying to, now this isn't Christians, but in Islam, they've been trying to bring about the 13th Imam for a while. And now I know Ryan Dean did an episode on the 4 red heifers that they're trying to bring in. And like you said, are they trying to purposely usher in that so they can control it? Or, because to me, if you usher that in, it's not organic, so it's not going to work.
Correct. And the 4 red heifers, you're referring to the Jews being sent 4 red heifers last year, that
so they can start animal sacrifices
exactly
again and rebuild
which
the temple.
is the temple, and then the lamb is the ultimate sacrifice at the end. So are we
We're pretty close.
Back at the beginning again? Are we about to have a new Messiah? Is this a restart or a reboot of an old version of a movie? It's a great question. However, there's a lot of weird shit that has happened, especially to us. And it's been absolutely the fucking weirdest thing in the world. And it started on a date in September
4th of 2021.
In which, well, you tell the story, because I don't know, because I wasn't really there.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though I was there.
His body was there, but he was not present per se. So, okay. So we went to Pennsylvania for my best friend's wedding, who I hadn't seen in about 14 years. Okay. Because he came down with stage 3
prostate cancer
about 6 weeks after getting the jab at the ripe old age of 43. Yeah. So he decided to get married because he was afraid he was going to die. So
2 years younger than me.
Yeah. So we took this trip, and it was just a long weekend, right? It was a quick turnaround trip. We drove up and back. And when we got home, I sat on our back porch, and I kind of went into memory writing, okay? Like I relived the entire experience and I wrote it down as it happened to me again. And it took me as long to write it as it did to live it, which is about 3.5 hours. But it's only about a 10 to 15 minute read. And some of it's very explicit, so I won't get
you have full freedom of speech on my show.
Into it, all of it. But yeah. Let's just say that I could very easily type this up and sell it as angel porn.
A smut novel.
Okay. Right? Shades of Grey is tame. All right.
Now does that fall into that Sasquatch erotica type stuff too?
Well, actually, it would fall under paranormal. It's called paranormal erotica. It's a whole genre of paranormal erotica.
I like where your head's at.
I know a lot of people. I actually know a lot of people in that genre because one of the biggest conventions that my hotel used to host was called Authors After Dark, and there was a lot of paranormal erotica authors there, and they're like frumpy middle-aged women wearing corsets and playing on giant blow-up slides into big vats of balls. Anyway,
and dildos.
And they'd have dildo parties and tattoo things and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, so
now I know where my dildos came from in Afghanistan.
It's very possible. But yeah, so I wrote this whole thing down. So let me read this to you because it's the easiest way to go through it.
I'm going to mute my mic.
You do that. An angel came to visit me last night. Michael, I think. My husband and I, were at my best friend's wedding in Pennsylvania. We did a weekend trip up, which meant 20 hours in the car for one day with my friend, but it was worth it. He won't be with us much longer, and I'm so grateful I got to see him one last time. It was a beautiful wedding, small, intimate, 100 people in a cafe with the wedding and reception in the same place. We went to see my friend at his house in the afternoon to hang out for a bit before the event. We got to the wedding a little early, about 4:15 for a 5 p.m. ceremony. Open bar, so why not, right? Mick had a few too many martinis this early on. So I laid off. Whichever one of us gets drunk first does not drive. We met some cool people, especially Brian with the blue hair and his partner Brian, spelled with a Y. They both love Mick. He pretends to be antisocial, but when he wants to be, and he's got his Irish up, he can charm anyone. The ceremony was beautiful and unique to them, just perfect. Dinner was great. Music was fabulous. The dancing just got started. And then it got weird. I came in from the outside patio in time for cake and sat down next to Mick. And then his watch dinged. He looked at it, a text message, and said, "You know that number I told you to remember?" "Which one?" "There are lots of numbers," I asked. 666, 500 million, 70%, I said. 47.1. It just came out. The audit numbers. Side note, I haven't yet seen it made public and I've been looking, but I did see that Arizona got the report and a judge ordered its release for Monday, tomorrow, as I write this, which never came out. Then his watch dinged again and he looked at it and went white and sober. "We've got to go," he said. "What do you mean we've got to go?" "It's my best friend's wedding. We drove 10 plus hours to get here. What the fuck? What's going on?" "I just got a warning that we're not safe in Pennsylvania. Who knows we're here?" he asked. And now I was sober, but calm because I don't lose my shit under pressure. "Just my parents, my boss, the kids. I don't think we said it on the podcast, just that we were traveling." "I don't think so either," he said. "Eat your cake and say your goodbyes, and I'll meet you out back." And so I did. I told my friend we had to go, and if anyone asked about us, we were never here. I grabbed up our name placeholders from the table, saw Brian with the blue hair on the way out the front door, and called Mick. Actually, I texted him first, but he didn't respond right away, so I called him. "Where are you?" "By the truck," he said, "about a block away." I rushed down the street on my heels, not the best neighborhood, but I'm quick in heels, and I got in the truck. Mick was in the driver's seat. "Want me to drive?" I asked. "Absolutely not." And then he proceeded to utilize all of his training in driving, tracking, and evasion to get us back to the hotel. Side streets, constantly watching the rearview mirror, even pulled a fast U-turn in the middle of a main road, drove up to the road with the hotel with his lights off, and backed into a parking space across from the side door, which happened to be the door to the hall where our room was located. Convenient. And there was a drunk guy standing by the door. He seemed very obviously drunk, almost too obvious, just stood there for a while leaning against the wall, sometimes swaying as he smoked something, a cigarette, a joint, not sure. Then he walked toward the truck, circling around towards my side. Mick thought he was going to get a look at the plate, but then he turned away and went towards the dumpster and tossed something on the ground. probably the butt of whatever he'd been smoking, and walked around the corner of the building towards the pool. At the same time, a car pulled in, a minivan with round headlights and a roof rack. The same car Mick thought had been following us earlier, but they pulled into a spot in front of the side door. A man, a woman, and a teenager got out with their bags. Mick was full of paranoia. If they don't all walk around front, if one of them stays back, we're leaving everything in the room and going home. We are not. The computer's in there, my tablet, our clothes. I'll go get it, I said. No. I didn't get the message until you went outside by yourself. They're not after me. They're after you. Come on, we'll go together. Pack our stuff and get out of Pennsylvania. Okay, I said. And we got to our room without incident. I immediately started packing up. We didn't have much. We changed out of my party dress. And then Mick said, if they're watching us and we leave right now, they'll get us easily. Let's get a few hours of sleep and leave first thing. More traffic to blend with. I think that's a good idea, I said. You drove all day yesterday and had a lot to drink tonight. We could both use some sleep. But I'm glad you gave me some before we left. Oh, I promised you more tonight. I'm going to keep that promise, he said, standing in front of the door, holding his gun, listening for sounds in the hallway. I laughed. How are you going to do that while you're watching the door, I asked. And he turned around and threw his gun on the bed, stripped off his clothes, hanging his jacket carefully on the hanger. And he looked at the pins on it for a minute, studying them. And then he stalked, naked, back to the door and listened again. Bring me my gun, he whispered. I complied, holding it like he taught me and handing it to him. He listened for another second and waved me towards the bed. Get over there, he whispered, still listening to voices and noises. Then he turned back toward me and looked at me, and I've never seen that look in his eyes before, and I've known him for 30 years. He looked like a caged animal. It was scary and compelling at the same time. He put his gun down on the nightstand and said, now I'm going to make love to you. A flat statement, but still compelling. I bent over the bed. No, come up here, he said. How are you going to watch the door from there? I asked. You'll see. Come lay down. I crawled up the bed to him and laid down. And he went straight to work. One eye on the door. And yeah.
Delete.
Your mic is muted.
My mic is muted.
Anyway. So anyway, I crawled up and I straddled him. Exactly. And he said, I'll always protect you. That's why I'm here. I know, I said, that's why you're still here, to protect me and our children. They're not my children, he said. I'm sorry, what? Of course they're your kids. I stopped moving, straddling him. Right. The little one looks just like you. In whose eyes, he asked. In your eyes, he said. In everyone's eyes, I said. In your eyes, he repeated. Have you never been with another man? This is a very odd question coming from my husband. We grew up together and I had plenty of boyfriends, and I was living with someone when he stole me away. And I'd had an affair years ago when he and I were separated, and he knew all of that. Not around the time I was getting pregnant, I said. I couldn't lie to him, never could. Although sometimes I tried, never worked. They're not my kids, he said again. And I looked at him, and I knew it was not my husband in there. It was someone else. Who are you? I asked. I can't tell you that. If I reveal myself, it will bring death, famine, plague, and war, he said. Aren't we already there? I asked. The world has been fucked for a while, and it's not getting better. Not yet, he said and frowned. Soon, but not yet. And he pulled me down to hold me, and I buried my face in his neck. Is that why I haven't been able to call you by your real name all night? I asked. Yes, I am not he said. Where is my husband? I asked. Dead, he said. No, he's not, I said. I can still feel his energy. He died a long time ago, he said. No, he didn't. I brought him back, and I'm keeping him with me. He's still here. He didn't die a long time ago. The little one is proof of that, I said. You need to listen more, he said. I listen all the time, I exclaimed. You need to listen more, he repeated. God has been trying to reach you, he said. I listen all the time. That's why I sit outside, I said. You hear, but you don't listen, he said. And then he rolled me over again. And delete. And then he said, know this, your children are not mine, but no matter what happens, this one will be mine. Okay. And then he said, why are you shivering? I said, well, I'm a little cold now and a little freaked out. I said, why are you calm now? We're protected now, he said. You have a guardian angel and God is all around us. I know about my angel, I said. It's why I was never seriously injured in all my car accidents. But I've felt stalked all my life. You chose to be here, he said. I know I chose to be here in this time and that I have a purpose, but I don't know what it is. You need to listen more. You don't believe, he said. I do listen. Strangers have been walking up to me on the street my whole life and telling me that I'll bring a lot of people to the light, but I don't know what that means. How do I do that? I asked. You need to listen more and try harder. Oh, I was so frustrated. I was quiet for a minute while I calmed down. I want a daughter, I said. You can't have one, he said. You're to have the Son of Man. No, I said, I'm too old. That's what Mary said, he responded. I don't want that for my boys. They shouldn't have to go through that. They chose to be here too in this time for their own purpose. You need to listen more. You don't believe, he said. And I knew he was right because my boys have special gifts and a special relationship with God. But I still felt driven to protect them. I shouldn't have cut my hair, I said. Yes, you should have, he said. Do you know about the chime and the numbered one and Makara? I asked. I'd learned these things from my research into the Vril, and I knew Mick knew nothing about them. Of course I do. He was angry all of a sudden when before he was calm. What do you know about them? He demanded, jumping out of the bed and glaring at me. He was menacing and magnificent all at the same time. I've been in contact with the numbered one, I said. Do you want to call him? I asked, throwing anger back at him. He might be menacing, but I have no fear of him. He would never hurt me. He would lay down his life for me. I have always known that. Yes, call him, he challenged. Well, I've got his phone number, but I've never spoken to him, only emailed. And it's pretty late. I prevaricated. He let it go. I'm getting messages from God and Jesus, he said. Text messages? What service do they use? Verizon? AT&T? Horizon, he said. And I laughed. It was pretty funny. That's not the bloodline I'm here to protect, he said. I'm Catholic. I protect the blood of St. Clair, he shouted. I know I'm descended from Jesus and Mary, I said. You don't understand what that means, he said. I'm the dragon, I asked, trying to remember my revelations. No, he yelled, you fight the dragon. You have 10 years from today, September 4th. And then he walked back over towards the door. And he stood in front of the mirror looking at himself. And I looked too, because he has a supremely excellent ass. Few women marry a true warrior, he said. You can't see my wings, but they're there. And then he looked at me sitting in the bed and said, you're shivering again. And I got up to put some clothes on, but he grabbed them out of my hands and threw them across the room and dragged me back onto the bed. We were both sitting up with my legs straddling his waist, and he grabbed my head in his hands and he kissed my forehead firmly. I loved you, but he loves you, he said. And I knew he was talking about Mick. I knew you before this time, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, he said, and he laid down, pulling me over to straddle him again. What does this body always do around you, he asked. Respond, I said. I have more control, he said. He can't feel his right leg. He's really fucked up, he said. I know. He's been that way a long time. I told you I've kept him here. His purpose is not yet fulfilled, he said. Trust him. He'll protect you. I cannot stay here. And then he closed his eyes, and all of a sudden his right arm jerked above his head hard, pulling him onto his side like something was pulling out of him, and Mick rolled back over, and he wasn't breathing. And I started massaging his chest and smacking his face. Come back to me, I said. Mick opened his eyes and looked at me, naked and straddling him, and there was no recognition. His eyes went wide and scared. Who the fuck are you? He said. Get the fuck off of me. I'm your wife, I said. Calm down, babe. Come back to me. And then his eyes closed again, and he stopped breathing again. And I started massaging his chest again and blew a few breaths into his mouth. Come back to me, I said. And his eyes opened again, and this time they recognized me. Hey, do you know who I am? I asked. Yeah, it took him a minute, and then he said my name. Good. Do you know where we are? I asked. He looked around at the hotel room. We're in D.C., he said. I just dropped off a prisoner. No, babe, we're in Pennsylvania. We drove up for my friend's wedding. He looked blank. It's 2021. We've been married for 17 years. We have 2 kids. We do a podcast together while we rail at the government. Biden is pretending to be president. Who? He asked. We had taken a trip to D.C. before we got married, so I knew exactly when he thought we were. Joe Biden. Trump was president before him. That was the shit. Who? He asked again. Donald Trump, I said. And then his eyes closed and he stopped breathing again. So back to bringing him back. Chest massage, chest cheek slapping. And finally I yelled, come back to me. His eyes opened. Why am I back? He asked. And it wasn't Mick. I don't know, I said. Where is my husband? He's over there, he said, moving his eyes up. Bring him back, I said. All of him. In this time, I demanded. His hand is the key, he said, and he closed his eyes. And I grabbed his hand and he came up, jerking, drawing a deep breath. Hey, I said, you're back. What's the last thing you remember? Dancing? No. Talking to the Bryans on the patio? How'd we get here? He asked. It's a long story, I said. And then he closed his eyes and stopped breathing again. And I grabbed his hand. Right away, he came back with another deep breath. Hey, I said again. What happened? He asked. And do you think you can move? You're kind of crushing my junk. I was still straddling him. So I moved and I started to tell him the story. When I got to the part about the warning, he said, let's check my phone. And there were no messages there, only the text from me asking where he was as we were leaving. But I had heard his phone ding. And then I told him about me asking about the chime and the numbered one. And he said, what the fuck is that? Just something I discovered in my real research, I said. And then I told him the rest of it, all of it. He said, you know, you sound batshit crazy, right? I said, I know. I couldn't make this up, and I can't lie to you. You know that. Are you sure you weren't dreaming? He asked. Positive. I said, we've been back here for 3 hours. I never went to sleep. Well, what kind of weed were you smoking with your friend? I think it was a little too much. I said, I took one hit, and that was hours ago. I'm not high. I'm not drunk. I was not dreaming. I'm telling you what happened. He said, so you're telling me that I was possessed by the angel Gabriel and that you're the next Mary, that you're going to bear the Son of Man and fight the dragon? I said, yeah, that about sums it up, but I think it was Michael. I said, why Michael? He asked. I don't know. I just felt it. And I couldn't call you by your name. And that's the closest to Michael. And he shook his head. I'm beat and raw. I guess I missed a good time. Let's get some sleep. We'll talk about it on the ride home tomorrow. And then he kissed me, and I realized that except for the tender kiss on the forehead, it was the first time he'd kissed me all night. And he took a while for him to believe me, actually. The next morning, he remembered none of it, and I had to tell him the story all the way again on the ride home. And once again, he didn't believe me. And we started doing some research. Or at least he didn't want to believe me. Yeah.
It's a hard thing. I mean,
No, wow. You don't understand because there's is all been leading up. There's all sorts of things throughout my life I've noticed. Like, for instance, the color thing. It's like one of those things I've seen since I was a kid, like since I can remember. I can remember seeing colors around people ever since. The crazy part is I remember the first funeral I went to. My Uncle Pat, I'll never, ever, ever fucking forget it. I saw color around him while he was in his casket. I was like, how is that possible? He's dead. His soul has left the body. Should have. Or if it didn't, it means something else. And it's always freaked me out to this day that I saw that it was there. It was like, holy shit, you've got to be kidding me. Just little things like that. I've seen stuff. I've always... I've had an inkling when not to do shit. Like, not a good idea, not tonight. Right. Like, don't get in that car. Don't get on that plane or be late to something. You know, something weird. Just you get those feelings that like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be here right now. This is a bad idea.
Okay, sorry.
You okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
It's something I've experienced quite a bit. And it's just been like one of those things I've always known I had. And then once I found out that she knew about it, I was like, there's no way that this happened. They always told me this would never happen. Said it would never happen.
So then he came back again the following weekend. And I was angry. I was mad. Like, I didn't want to believe. I was really mad. And I yelled at him a lot. We were actually driving home from our friend's house. So we went over there a lot before he moved. And I was yelling at him. I was so mad. And he was like, why are you acting this way? Why are you being such a bitch? And I was like, why are you putting me in this situation? Like, why me? You know, why me? Why are you putting this on me? I mean, you're the one telling me, and I don't believe, I don't have faith. So why choose me? Right? With all the stuff that Mick has done. I mean, yeah, he has faith, but he firmly believes he's going to hell. Why choose him? Why us? I don't get it. I was so mad.
So when you said you were yelling at him, you were yelling.
I was yelling at Gabriel.
Gabriel. Okay.
I was yelling at Gabriel. Okay. And I still didn't quite know who he was. I still thought he was Michael and Mick thought he was Gabriel. But I was angry. And we got home and we went inside the house and Mick started saying that his hands hurt. And I was like, your hands hurt? And then he looked down. He's like, there's blood in my hands. And I was like, how? No, there's no blood in your hands. What are you talking about? And he got in bed. And our older son had to help me put him in bed because he could barely even walk. Like he was in so much pain. And his feet hurt. And when he laid in bed and I took his shoes off, he put his right foot over his left foot and he curled his toes. That is not physically possible for him to do. Okay. With his right foot, that's the foot he can't feel. He can walk on it. When he gets tired, he limps. He cannot point his toes. He's not been able to do that for 17 years. But he laid in bed and he put his right foot over his left foot and he pointed his toes. And then he started telling me that his feet hurt and that his feet were bleeding. Okay. And he couldn't look at me because I was so bright around the middle. He was like, get me sunglasses. Like, yeah, I can't, you're blinding me. And it was the craziest thing. And I realized that he was experiencing the pain of the stigmata to convince me that it was real. Okay. And it worked. Oh, it worked. And we found out that I was pregnant, or we suspected that I was pregnant. And then he came back again a third time. And again, we were on our way home from our friend's house, same friend. But this time the kids were with us and we were in the car and I looked over and I saw him and I knew it was him because his eyes like almost turned black. And I was like, not now, not with the kids in the car. And I started playing that Struggle Jennings song, God, We Need You Now, like the top of my lungs playing it. I'm top volume, singing at the top of my lungs. Like I think I played it 3 or 4 times on repeat for us to get home. And we got home and I sent the kids into the house and I got out of the car and I went to go get him, like to open, because he didn't seem to be like, he wasn't opening the door. He wasn't getting out of the car or anything. So I went around the car to open the door and he couldn't move. And he was like, and he said, that's not how this is going to work. And I was like, okay. So I closed his door and I walked around the car. And as I did so, I took my phone out and I pulled up the voice recording app. And I hit record as I got back into the car. And I put the phone down, face down in the center console. So he couldn't see it. So he didn't know I was recording him. And I ended up recording our conversation. It took actually 13 minutes and 13 seconds exactly, which is kind of crazy in and of itself. Yeah. But I have that recording here if you want to hear it.
I do.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, so tell me how it works.
I had full control a while ago. It's gone now. You didn't listen. I told you to listen. You didn't hear. You heard what you wanted to hear. You believed for all of a day. Belief for a day is not for all of that of a lifetime. Are there any questions? Before I leave now.
There's a ton of questions.
I'm sure there is, and there's none I can answer for you.
Well, then why ask the question if you can't actually answer them?
Because the question has to be asked.
That seems kind of pointless.
That's for your lack of belief.
Oh, I believe.
Oh, I believe too. I believe you believe something that does not exist.
What do you think I believe that doesn't exist?
Me, God.
God doesn't
that are
exist?
beyond your control. I believe you believe that.
I think you proved it to me pretty well last week.
40 days and 40 nights. Just remember what that means. Just remember, I'm not bullshitting you. He's in tons of pain. He feels everything. I fucking feel everything. And I'm tired of feeling everything. I don't want to come back to him. He's been chosen for a reason. You've been chosen for a reason. It's up to you now to figure out what that reason is. I can only tell you so much.
What am I supposed to do?
Believe. Have faith. Believe in something you can't see, touch, smell, or hear. But believe. He can. Not only he can, but the ability for him to understand even what is coming out of my mouth right now is a sign that he's more than what he seems.
Well, yeah, that's true.
However,
Did you heal him from the jab?
I cannot carry on in the body I'm in, not without hurting him severely, and I'm not allowed to do that. Therefore, there's only so many times I can come back in this form. Everything from this point on will be something you've never seen before. I cannot come back to him. I come back to him again, he dies. Your call.
No, don't then. I definitely don't want him to die.
Right now, I can't move anything of him past his neck, because he's no longer accepting. So he's begun to doubt. He didn't doubt before. So what have you done to change his mind?
I told him the truth and it scared him.
You told him the truth about what?
About you?
About what you don't understand.
I told him exactly what happened. The entire
You told him
experience.
something you will never, ever, ever begin to even fathom. Something the Lord above hasn't even told you yet, because you have failed to listen.
How do I listen?
Open your ears. It's all around you. You just have to listen. It's in everything you see, do, and touch. But you have to listen. You have to have faith. Faith in something more than you. Faith in something that doesn't even apply to you. All mankind is part of this, and is at the end of this. However, if you don't believe, all of mankind is doomed.
You're putting the fate of humanity on my shoulders? On my ability to believe? Or he is.
You think Mary had it any easier? He works in mysterious ways.
Ain't that the truth?
However mysterious to you, however mysterious to me, he also has faith in mankind. But apparently that faith is waning.
We done pissed him off.
You've done something. And there ain't a soul that's going to believe you.
Of course they're not going to believe me. They didn't believe Mary either.
Well, if you believe in that story, what's so hard about what I'm telling you?
Again, I told you I believe you. You proved it to me last week. I question everything. I need evidence, but you freaking hit me over the head with it.
You're still questioning.
Well, today was...
He knows. He knows better than anybody else. You might want to think twice. He knows. Stop questioning. Why question something you know it's going to happen? I can't think of one reason Well, then again, I've seen more things you will ever see.
Is the shot cutting people off from
I
God?
don't have much more time. Are those really the questions you want to ask me?
If I have no control over what's going to happen, you told me you can't answer any questions about what's going to happen or what I'm supposed to do.
Are
I have to
those
figure it out for myself.
really the questions you want to ask me, though? Mankind's had so many more questions. Are we the only ones out here? Are we the only ones? Did you create everything?
I already know the answer to that question.
Really?
He did create everything.
For someone who doesn't believe as much as you do, I find that hard to believe.
I know we're all connected. I'm connected to him through that connection.
Yeah, but you don't believe that.
I do believe that.
Not in him, you don't.
Is the earth flat?
As I said, your faith is misplaced.
Is the earth flat?
Place your faith where it belongs. And as I said before that, listen to what's being told to you. You are the acceptor of all the truths, of everything that mankind needs to know. You will tell everyone. That's up to you, though. It's not up to him.
What am I supposed to tell them?
What you know is true.
Is it going to be the end, or is it the beginning of something new?
Is that a question you really want to know?
Well, at least I'm getting somewhere. Yeah, it is a question I really want to know.
It's not an answer I'm willing to give you.
Well, that kind of tells me the answer then.
10 years.
From
a week
September
ago.
4th. 2 weeks ago. Your perception of time is messed up.
You'll have that when you jump into just some human.
He's more than just some human, and you know it.
Well, yeah, because no human can hear me without their heads exploding and their chests imploding.
What's your name?
Gabriel, you know my name. You've known my name since the first day I was here.
I thought you were Michael. Not a big fan, are you?
I'm trying to stop Michael.
What is Michael trying to do?
What do you think Michael's doing? What is Michael known for?
War, plague, death, destruction.
So one more time. What do you think I'm trying to stop?
What do I do?
What have I told you?
Listen.
It's all around you. He will tell you what to do. Only the unfaithful don't hear him. Obviously, the person I'm in right now hears him. Because if he didn't hear him, we would not be having this conversation right now. Because his head would have exploded and his chest would have imploded. Because that kind of happens when you talk to an angel. It's one of those things.
So I've heard. Although there's not much written about it, because y'all don't come to visit very often.
No, but normally when we do, we're trying to ward off something really bad.
Everyone's gonna die.
Well, it's up to mankind.
Not everyone, but...
Again, that's up to mankind. I don't have much time left.
What do you have left to tell me?
What questions? Yeah.
Go. I'll ask God my questions. Send my husband back to me.
So we didn't play quite the whole thing, but
Wow.
yeah.
I'm going to say what? Hearing that restored a little bit of something that I think I lost. Because ooh, my ears are tingly. I
don't
was a
remember
devout Christian.
any of that. I don't remember any of that. When she played this for me, I was like, you don't have
Actually,
it. It's not me.
He couldn't hear it the first 2 or 3 times I played it for him.
Yeah.
All he heard was static. He could hear my voice. He couldn't hear his. You were saying you were a devout Christian.
Yeah. Now, if you get into ley lines and what have you, the Susquehanna River holds some power or whatever.
Very strong energy there. Yeah.
So I decided when my daughter was 2 or 3, try to save a marriage that was failing, to get baptized in the middle of January in the Susquehanna River. Now, I've told this story on my podcast a couple times. I've never told the reason why I did it, because I thought I was trying to save a marriage, which was failing. And hindsight, what I have now is 1,000 times better. So when I went under and I opened my eyes in the Susquehanna River in the middle of January, I saw clarity. I could see through the water. I felt something, but I didn't know what that something was. So after that, I kind of started questioning a lot about the Bible and the story of Jesus. Now, I believe in God. There is a creator. I do contribute a lot of some of the Bible, and you get into Catholicism and what have you, that's a different story, to man throwing their interpretation into a lot of things. But hearing that reminded me
that there's really something greater than all of us out
there is a God that is very great, that is very divine, and that man, my ears are tingling again.
One of the things that one of the things since then, obviously, it's gotten worse. It's not gotten better.
Well, hold on, because he said in that recording, he said that he wouldn't be able to come back again because Mick didn't believe anymore that he was fighting him, that if he came back again, Mick would die.
Right.
But he did come back again. In fact, he's come back a number of times. But the next time he came back, we were on our way home from Tulsa. And it was 4 weeks later. It was 30 days later. And we were on a plane. And Mick was reading a book that we had gotten at this event that we went to. And he was literally in the middle of a sentence, and his head leaned back in his chair and his eyes closed. And then he opened and he came forward and he looked at me. And I knew it was Gabriel. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Where are we?" He kind of looked around. I said, "We're on a plane." He said, "What's that?" I said, "It's a tin can in the sky with wings." And he said, "Oh, no wonder I'm able to come so easily. You're closer to me up here." I said, "Okay." And I can't even imagine what the people around us were thinking, or if they could even hear us, to be quite honest. But so I looked at him, I said, "Well, why are you here? Like, how are you here? You said that if you came back, he would die, and you don't seem to be having any problems. So how are you here?" He said, "Well, he's not fighting me anymore. He's accepting now." "Why is he accepting now? What did you do?" Gabriel's a real dick sometimes, by the way. and I said, "Well, I convinced him that you were real." And And I tried to get my phone out to record it, and he said no. And I said, well, that's how I convinced him the last time. And he said, you got away with it once. You're not doing that again. He said, turn it off all the way. I said, okay. So I turned it all the way off. And he looked at me and he said, you still have questions? And I said, yeah, I do have questions. He said, what are your questions? I said, well, I don't understand. You told me that we had 10 years from September 4th and that I was going to have a baby and that baby was going to be the son of man, but I expected that way in the future. But I'm pregnant right now. How the hell is that going to happen? How did 10 years turn into 10 months? Because this should be like 7 years down the road. And he said, I'm not in charge of the timeline. Maybe the timeline's been sped up. I said, okay. And then he left again. He, again, closed his eyes, came right back, and went right back to finishing the sentence that he had been reading. And I looked at him, and he was like, what? And he had no idea. And then I didn't exactly lose the baby because I've had miscarriages before. I know what it feels like. But at 15 weeks, the baby just disappeared. I went in for an ultrasound and it was just gone. Just gone. They call it disappearing fetus syndrome.
Now, is that their way of
giving a title to something they can't explain?
Yeah. And I don't want to get cryptid conspiracy into this, but some people go through that through alien abductions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do want to.
I've never had an abduction experience. Though.
Right.
No, hold on. Understand.
But it's not that. It's not. That is actually what they.
A lot of people say, well, you're
correct.
fucking legitimately crazy.
Oh, yeah.
No, we're
yeah.
not legitimately crazy.
No.
First of all,
we're illegitimately crazy.
Something you have to understand about my wife. She is a high-risk pregnancy going into this because her last child was delivered C-section because he was a frank breech.
And he was huge.
Long story short.
And I'm old.
And of her advanced age, this automatically presents issues.
Well, when you're 79 years old trying to have a baby, it is hard. But you do look great for 79.
I mean, preeclampsia. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong. Anyway,
I had my last one at 33, and they called it advanced maternal age. At 33, I mean, for fuck's sake, yeah.
Long story short, going into this, they already started at like not even week 12 was her first sonogram for a heartbeat. They had a fetal sonogram at week 12.
Yeah.
And that is almost on top of the week in which the heart
and it wasn't a manufactured sound
is brought to life. And go figure, we have a heartbeat. So we're pretty sure there's a fetus there.
And I could feel him moving. I could always feel my babies very early on. So I could feel him moving. Like I knew he was there. And
when you hear the little choo-choo train.
Yeah. And then he was gone. Then he was just gone.
And then all of a sudden they turn around. Yeah, no, you're not pregnant at all.
I stopped feeling him move, and we had moved, so I changed doctors at the same time. But I had a positive pregnancy test, and I had a
fetal sonogram,
and then I
blood test.
Yeah, and then I changed doctors.
Positives across the board.
And and then it was just he was gone, just gone. It was the craziest thing, and it was after I brought that to Gabriel's attention that. How is this timeline different? So, and then my 40 days was up, and then Mick's 40 days started.
Now, before we get into that, when you were coming back from Tulsa, was that when you were meeting up with mutual friends of ours in the podcast community out in Colorado?
We met some of them out there, yeah. Josh from the Red Pill Project was in Tulsa. That's actually where we met him the first time.
Yeah.
And craziness, because when we get together, at least some of us, we start talking bloodlines because that's kind of what happens. So, and especially when you know your bloodlines, like when you can trace your history back, then, you know, you start talking about, you know, bloodlines. Anyway, it turns out Josh and I share a grandfather like 8 generations back. So, yeah, so that was kind of crazy. Like he's one bloodline, I'm another bloodline, and they're just, although he's actually not, well, he's not, I'm bastard bloodline. He's not a bastard bloodline, but it doesn't matter. Still share grandfather.
The reason I ask this, and it's weird because I can't remember how you two and I connected and initially crossed paths. I know we did. I don't know what the pretext was for it. And then the next thing I know, I come on for the 9/11. I'm guest hosting. We're forming a friendship. Fast forward a little bit. I've known Kyle from the Big Dumb for a while. I've known Joe and Jen from Legit Bat for a while now, and Colorado Dank or Jason, however you want to go about it. But 2 Sundays ago, I went back as a guest on Legit Bat, and Jen asked me, she goes, what, you know, Joe's like, what have you been up to? I, you know, explain. He goes, I'm filling in, you know, for Mick. I had big shoes to fill, you know, this and that, co-host and what have you. And she goes, did she have her baby? And now I purposely did not dig into this story because I like going into interviews like this blind. Okay. I said, I didn't know she was pregnant. I said, I don't think so. I said, do they have a 10-year-old? And I think I might have said 16-year-old, but
Close enough.
She goes, oh, well, that's weird because she was our DD because she was pregnant at the time. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, fair enough. And then now putting pieces together in this giant web of how we all come about and intermingle and mix, and then hearing this story as it's playing out in real time for me for the first time. And I'm left more speechless than I do have questions in some areas, which makes for a shitty fucking interviewer. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like kind of like probably where you were. What questions do I? Is the Earth flat? What fucking questions do you ask? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, here I was almost panicked. Like I, you know, when you're in that situation where it's like the most important interview of your life and you just completely draw a fucking blank.
So seriously, let's like literally after she told me this the first time, we did some serious research. We really started digging into this shit about angelic possession. And
there's very little.
There's like 8 recorded cases out there.
However,
and there's very little detail into like 2 of the cases, but the big 4 ones, the 4 of the big ones that I was like, okay, maybe I can see this. Maybe I can understand what you're talking about here. We were reading one of them, and it was a guy that was essentially he was enslaved with Saint Lucifer, because you must remember Lucifer originally was an angel.
Yeah,
he was considered an anointed saint at the time that he was
most beautiful
angelic
angel.
Yes, and to hear the name, you think demonic automatically. However, this angel had a different, I guess you would call it, opinion of what he was supposed to do. Anyway, reading this story, they talked about the first couple interactions, talked about not breathing after the interaction, almost a dead, lifeless state until aroused. Talked about all sorts of weird shit that just coincided with everything that happened to me. For example, this was an 11-year-old child this was happening to. However, this 11-year-old child wasn't allowed to move from his bed whenever it happened. So everything happened to him, and he couldn't move from his bed.
There was another guy, a dad, and he and his family were going up the stairs, and he was possessed by an angel, and he was like kind of like seized up, stiff. He had no control over his body.
Mm-hmm.
He could only talk, and he told his family, he warned his family about something really bad that was going to happen, like a fire or something like that. And
he said, I feel the heat or something. He kept repeating, I feel the heat. I feel the heat. We need to leave. We need to leave.
When he came out of it, he couldn't breathe, and he fell backwards, and his 12-year-old son caught him, and he was a big guy, and his son was small, and his 12-year-old son caught him, and his mom was like, do you need me to help you carry him? And his son said, no, I've got him. And his son held him there without any strain or any difficulty for like 5 minutes while she revived her husband. And then he came to, and he had no recollection of it, but she heeded the warning, and they were not in the house when the fire happened.
Wow.
Which did happen. Yeah. So there are a few instances of it, but it's so rare. And like Gabriel said, they only come and it makes me think that child has some huge purpose. But as I think so many kids these days do. But
so when's the last time you've heard from him? I mean, obviously,
a couple days ago.
It's no secret that I'm asking this for the listening audience. I listen to your podcast, so
every day.
Yeah.
Well,
shut the fuck up.
So Mick had when my 40 days ended, Mick's 40 days started, and he literally bugged the shit out of Mick. But there was also an instance because Mick was a firefighter for a while.
So 40 days and 40 nights is Ezekiel's story.
Mm-hmm. And it's also the amount of time that the Jews were in the desert when they fled Egypt, and
that's Ezekiel's story.
But it's generally the amount of time, if you think about it, that it takes a woman to figure out that she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, right?
Ezekiel's story is probably my favorite story out of the whole Bible. People used to ask me when I was more prevalent in the church, they're like, oh, what's your favorite prophet? I'm like, Ezekiel. Why Ezekiel? He went through so much, and laid on the ground, had to cook over dung and this and that, and it's like, because it's the ultimate story of you go through the worst kind of shit in order to get the best reward at the end of the day.
Well, true belief, I think, is what it boils down to. That's the most important part of it. And it is crazy. It tracks back on, like, I don't know, 7 different real good Bible stories. Mm-hmm. But of them, yes, I would have to say Ezekiel's probably the most prominent because he did talk about 40 days and 40 nights. And as a Catholic, 40 days and 40 nights is also the time that Jesus roamed in the desert. Mm-hmm. Prior to the devil, when the devil was tempting him during Lent. It's 40 days and 40 nights. Mm-hmm. There's so many references to 40 days and 40 nights in the Bible. Something he harped on to her was the fact that 40 days and 40 nights is really important. Now, I have not, other than the number of references, other than the use of 40 by 40 in building, 40 by 40 cubits is used in almost all of the building construction, both in the Ark, both in the Grail, in the Temple,
the Noah's Ark. Yeah,
it's all measured in 40 by 40 cubits, which is freaking, the numbers they don't just happen like that. It doesn't just work like that. There is a divine authority when you start seeing numbers adding up 40 by 40 all the way across the board, across the spectrum. It's not natural.
Right.
Just saying.
And now there were those priest monks in Greece that said that after they got the jab, they were unable to enter a church or hear God for 40 days and 40 nights post the jab.
And they refused to get the second one because of it.
Yeah, they couldn't hear God.
It's just a number. I know it's just a number. I get it. It's gay.
Numbers are really
whatever.
important, though. It's not.
But
it's
it
not gay.
is really important because it is so many times talked about. For instance, the Virgin Mary statue in St. Marguerite's Bay in Mexico. It bleeds from the eyes for 40 days and 40 nights. And this happens every time around the time of the crucifixion. So for 40 days and 40 nights, this statue bleeds. People come from everywhere. This statue
it's a pilgrimage.
currently right now is back at the Vatican.
Yeah, because everything has been recalled to the Vatican. Everything.
However, when it was in St. Marguerite's Bay in Mexico, this statue is revered. I mean, revered to almost another religion above
it is.
Catholicism.
When we were kids, Unsolved Mysteries even covered it.
Yep.
On the date that it started bleeding. Like they walked in, they videotaped the statue. There was no blood. They went to leave and they realized that there was blood on the cheek of Mary. And they were like, where the fuck? And they had a camera on it and it just all of a sudden started to well up in the eye and starts rolling out of the statue. How is that fucking possible?
Well, okay, so you were talking about connections, Ghost, right? And how we came together. And I'm honestly, I don't know either, but that's been true of so many of us. So we went to Tulsa and we met Josh, and then Janet, who was kind of like our podcast mom. She invited us out to Colorado.
She actually that's who told me to start listening to your podcast, was Janet.
So she invited us out to Colorado to meet up with some other people, Jen and Joe from Legit Bat, and
Oh my God,
Charlie Robinson, and
so many people.
Chris from
Corey.
Corey Hayes. Like we met Corey Hughes. We met so many people, but Josh from Red Pill Project also lives in Colorado, so we went over there and we met him. But that's and interesting. So while we were there, and we found that almost every trip has had some kind of
Meaning.
spiritual
Like do something.
meaning aspect to it. In this one, we found one of the people that we met said that he had actually met the angel Uriel, and he was told he was given. And actually, I guess I can say it was Josh from the Red Pill Project, because he's said it on his podcast just the other day. He's talking about it now openly. Maybe we encouraged him to do it. But he was given the layout for he understands how the Ark of the Covenant works. He was told how it works, and he will be the one to lead the armies of the East past the walls of Jericho in the final battle. And then after we came home from Colorado, I went to Dallas. Mick couldn't go. He couldn't get the time off of work at the last minute. So I went to Dallas. And in Dallas...
Well, we didn't think we were going to be invited, but...
Again, Josh was there. And that's the first time I met Justin from Cannabis and Combat. Who was supposed to be the vessel for the Archangel Uriel, as Mick is the vessel for Gabriel. And more people have been, we've been brought together with more and more people that we know are a part of what's coming, right? And we call ourselves the remnant, because that's really what it is. I firmly believe there are some of us that chose to be here in this time, in this place, for a specific purpose, to fight the final battle in the end times that we're coming up on. Whatever the rapture may be, is it?
Shit, you got Joe Biden talking about Armageddon now.
I mean, Revelations could could come in any manner of ways. Because if you look at it, when they wrote it, they were writing about visions of the future.
Of shit they didn't understand.
But they were trying to put it into words that people that were in their time could understand, and they didn't understand what they were seeing. So you have to look at it from that perspective as well. If you look at it that way, like what we're living through right now is pretty fucking close. So there's a lot that's coming since CERN turned on, and this was kind of the craziest experience that we had. So, or that I had.
Well, I guess I had it too, but just wasn't.
No, this was not the one with you.
Oh, okay.
So, the night that the Georgia Guidestones dropped, all right, the night after they turned, or the night they turned CERN back on. Was that the night they turned CERN on, or the night after? The night after. Okay. So we were at.
No, it was like a week after.
No, it was that night. Because remember, we didn't leave for a couple of days because we were concerned about CERN. So we were in Vegas. We'd left the border early and we went to Vegas to go visit Justin. And Mick had taken the dogs for a walk because we brought the dogs with us. And Justin was at his computer. He was actually looking at something from the Ingersoll Lockwood website, the entrance to Hollow Earth in Antarctica. And I went over to him and I was like, "What are you looking at?" And I'm talking to him, and I put my head up against his, I put my cheek up against his, and we both had our eyes closed. And I'm telling him he needed to survive, and he was a good man, and he was worthy of what he was being asked to do. And this bright white light, and again, both of our eyes were closed. This bright white light started forming like behind my head, right? And it just got brighter and brighter and brighter. And then this huge burst of energy just pulsed through the both of us. It was crazy. And I opened my eyes and I looked at him and I was like, "Holy shit, did you feel that?" And he was like, "Yeah, did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And after that, I mean, we were just buzzing for the rest of the night. And that was the exact moment that the Georgia Guidestones dropped. Literally the exact moment that the Georgia Guidestones dropped. And about 20 minutes before that, Mick had felt the energy in the room flicker.
No, not even
Flip?
flicker. It was like, it got really, really, like when you see like.
Do you have light blue on your shoes?
No, they're black.
Oh, no, he's got a bracelet that has blue on it.
Yeah.
That might be what you're seeing.
You know when like you see a light bulb about to go out?
Yeah.
You know, it gets like really, really bright and then it pops, right? It was like that type of effect. Like I was sitting there and we had just done dabs for like the first time. And we're sitting there and I'm fucking higher than a goddamn kite. And I'm like looking around and all of a sudden, all the lights in the room at the exact same time go, they get like uber bright. And then all of a sudden they go back to normal. And I'm like, holy shit. I was like, "Hey, did you see that?" And she goes, "What are you talking about?"
I was like, "No, you're fucking
I was
high."
like, holy fuck. I like saw all of the lights in the room just go to uber bright. And then all of a sudden go back to normal.
But since that happened, and so we came home, we left then, we stayed in Vegas for 3 days and we came home. And we got home on Friday and Justin took his own life on Sunday. And we found out on Monday. And we were just, I was absolutely devastated. And we were both just devastated. That night that we found out and we did the show, Gabriel came back. And it was the first time he'd come to me for a while. And he was like, "Now is obviously not a good time." He said, but he said, "Know that when the messenger becomes the martyr, that will be the shot heard around the world. And it will be your job to tell everyone who he was." And I was like, "What the fuck does that mean?" As I'm hysterical crying, right? Because I just found out that one of my best friends is dead in the most horrific possible way. So, he was like, just know when the messenger becomes the martyr, that will be the shot heard around the world. And it will be your job to tell everyone who he was. I was like, fuck, okay. I'll figure it out eventually when it happens. And I thought I knew what it was, and it wasn't. So who knows? And I did ask if Justin was the martyr, and he said no. And then that night, shortly thereafter, actually, Mick started, he was kind of, it wasn't like he was having a seizure. Like he was laying in bed and he was, like there was something in him that wasn't him and it wasn't Gabriel. And his hand was moving just over and over again. Like he was trying to write something. So I grabbed a pen and I put a piece of paper, put the pen in his hand and put a piece of paper under him. And he wrote, "I'm sorry," over and over and over again. And I knew it was Justin coming through. But ever since then, now it's really easy for Gabriel. Now he doesn't even lose consciousness. Gabriel just comes and goes as he pleases. He usually doesn't even know that he's been there, because we'll be sitting out on the porch, smoking a bowl, chatting or whatever. And Gabriel will just come in and he'll have a 5-10 minute conversation with me, and then he'll leave and then it's gone. And then, and Mick doesn't even know anymore. And he just goes right along with the flow. And I usually don't even tell him. So
where do you think this takes? Because obviously throughout history, this isn't the first account of this type of possession. So where with the state that the world is in, we all know it's fucking crazy. It's nothing makes sense. What is down is actually up. We're living in the upside down.
So
where do you think this?
Let me put this as accurately as I think what you're looking for right now.
What's the end game?
And understand our
Well, not necessarily the end game.
No. I'm not talking about end game. I think I understand where you're going with this, and I think I can explain it better than you can ask the question. First, understand where we come from with this. Yes, I'm a devout Catholic. Yes, I do believe in Catholicism. Yes, I do believe in the religion. Why do I like the religion? Because I know on Sunday I can go be abolished of everything I did Monday through Friday or Saturday, and I can start all over again. And we can do that as much as we want because we're fucking Catholics, and that's what we do. So fuck off if you don't like it. However, you have to understand, I don't believe in this shit. I don't. The only reason I even come close to believing any of this is because she's got it recorded. And apparently this cocksucker has gotten tricky in the past here from stopping
my phone now. Yeah.
You from recording.
Yeah, he makes me turn off my phone now.
And then he checks it.
Yeah, he does.
As if he knows what he's looking at. I always giggle at that. I'm like, hun, he probably holds the phone upside down, for Christ's sake.
I often test him, right? Because I'll ask him a question, because he can read my thoughts at will, right? He can be in my head whenever he wants, just like he's in Mick's head. So sometimes I annoy him on purpose. Like if he doesn't want to answer a question, you have no idea how many times you can ask a question in the space of a thought.
When you just said I annoy him on purpose, the only part of the camera and video on my end, it glitched right at your face. Just your face. It just went for a millisecond.
Yes. Because he annoys me sometimes, because I like to know the why, right? He told me to stop questioning. I cannot. It is not in my nature. And he's come to accept that to a degree. He almost likes it sometimes that I argue with him, because I want to know why. Like, I'm going to do what he asked regardless, of course, but I want to know why. And I keep telling him, look, it'll be a lot easier for all of us if you tell me why I'm doing this, right? I'm going to do it either way, but I won't bitch nearly as much if you tell me why in advance. But I'll ask him a question in my head, in the afternoon, like when or sometimes in the morning, like when I'm on my way home from dropping our kid off at school, which I drive an hour and a half every day, round trip. And I'll ask him a question. And then Mick will come home from work and he'll give me the answer. And he'll be like, he said to tell you this. And I'll be like, what the fuck did you ask him? Because it'll be some obscure random thing, right? And nothing that he could have known. But then how I really know it was him, because like Mick said, he is a very devout Catholic. And when Justin died that night that he came to me, he looked at me and he said, you know, we normally choose Catholics because they believe suicide is a mortal sin. And I said, it's not a mortal sin? He said, no. People have free will. How can you be punished for exercising your free will? And I said, well, that's what I've always believed. But Mick absolutely does not believe that. He 1,000% believes that suicide is a mortal sin, and he would never say otherwise. And I know this because he's a devout Catholic.
Right.
But I've had very interesting conversations with Gabriel. We've talked about ancient history, how we came to be, where we came from, because I listened to I listened to an interview that Sarah Westall did with Paolo Biglino, who was he's an Italian, and he was a translator that worked with the publishing company that translated manuscripts for the Vatican. So he was translating the Talmud from the original Hebrew. And he came to the conclusion that God is not mentioned once in the Bible. That the Elohim, which is what's mentioned in the Bible, the Elohim is not God as we think of God. And we know this because Elohim is used both singularly and plural, right? So you can't have God and gods if it's just God. So what Paolo Biglino supposed is that the Elohim, God created the Elohim, and then the Elohim created us from their own DNA and Homo erectus that were already here. And they essentially created us to be their slaves, to be stewards of the planet. But we weren't supposed to breed, and we ended up getting out of control, outbreeding them and getting out of control.
Which is where some people confuse that story with the Anunnaki.
See,
Well,
so
hold on, that gets into it. It's interesting.
Wait, hold on. I got a question, right? Mm-hmm. Something that just popped in my head. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this because I was like, you know, when really did the decline in the difference of gods, you know, really start in the world? You know, when did we start seeing religions getting picked off here and there? You know, one religion
Egypt.
disappearing. I thought that too. I was thinking that as well. And I think
Rome,
it
Greece,
actually goes later than that. I think it actually spawns further than that. I think it actually started...
the decline of the church is the Middle Ages, which is the lost history that we don't know.
1923. Why in 1923? Because in 1924, the first radio broadcast signal was distributed across the world.
Maybe. Yeah.
And I was just wondering if maybe that, because, you know, now we're down to 3 very specific religions. Yeah. Every time that I've heard this dickhead, he has talked very specifically about several different religions that existed in the land. From
The Coptics. We talked a lot about the Coptics.
Aramaic. Well, he called it something else. He didn't call it the Coptics.
No, but
I translated it to the I don't know what it translates to. I have no idea what the word is. I have to look it up. But it's I just figured it was Coptic because of the way he was explaining it.
But in one of these conversations, so after I learned about Paolo Biglini, when we were on our way to Arizona, and then on the way back, and after we found out about Justin, he came back a couple days later because it was a better time. Mm-hmm. I wasn't so distraught. And we had a whole conversation because I was really curious, because Paolo Biglini said that the angels were the lowest caste of Elohim. Okay. And that they were like the managers of humanity, right? They were like the middle managers. And so I presented this to Gabriel, and he got really fucking mad. No, absolutely not. We are completely separate for them. We're so much better than them. Like he got really mad. It was very funny. But what he told me, because I drew him in with that, with his anger and, you know, saying that this was the interpretation from the Bible.
He explained it, essentially they're of an otherworldly sort, that there were two races that pretty much started us.
So what we call the Vril were here first, okay? And they live underground in the Hollow Earth. This is what he told me. And the Elohim came, God created the Elohim came here. The Vril were already here. The Elohim did create us from their DNA and Homo erectus. And then the Elohim left. And the Vril mated with us. And that's where the Nephilim come from. And then the Elohim came back and found the Vril here, and they have always been mortal enemies. And they went to war, and the Vril went back underground. But now it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The Elohim want to bring us back to where we were, to be like the New World Order is essentially the old world order. They want to bring back the original serfdom days, with us being slaves as the stewards of the planet. Like, you know, 90% of it belonging to the animals and 10% of, you know, controllable people that are just here to serve the needs and whims of the Elohim, who live between 2,000 and 4,000 years. And the Vril don't necessarily want that. And the angels don't necessarily want that. So as above, so below, they're fighting with each other, and we're the pawns caught in the crosshairs, and we don't even know it.
So it's kind of where Genesis 6 conspiracy from Gary Wayne comes into play.
Absolutely. You know what? You're the first motherfucker, and I didn't say anything to you about that. You were the first motherfucker, even out of like Bible scholars that I've had on our show.
I'm not familiar with that.
To catch that verse, that specific, and it's crazy because it is exactly what you just said. Please educate her.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that at all.
So Genesis 6 is the only time I don't want to say only time, because it is mentioned, I think, one other time in the New Testament, maybe twice, bear with me. Genesis 6 is the only time in the Old Testament that the Nephilim are referred to. And the Nephilim were created by what he calls the Elohim. He puts an H in there, but Elohim. And there was another one that he spoke of, because you had the Elohim and I'm drawing a blank on it. Anyway, so he goes into the Elohim being created, and these are the giants of the world. And when the flood of Noah came about, okay, and he breaks it down into their exact size, even if it was a cubit, a royal cubit, on their measurements, to how tall and how wide these beasts were. And okay, the flood came. Did it actually eradicate the Nephilim? If you look at it and dive into it using the mathematics, they could have been tall enough to be able to walk with their heads above water and still survive, which is where nowadays some people make the connection to Sasquatch being part Nephilim and what have you. It's a whole big rabbit hole. I had him on very early on as probably very rookie in interview style, right? So if the listeners want, go get the Genesis 6 conspiracy by author Gary Wayne and read it, or listen to, just search out, because he's been on many different podcasts, and he is a Christian, but he calls himself a Christian contrarian. Like so
He
it's a
believes
very
an opposite side of Christianity that not a lot of people believe. However, with Genesis 6 itself, what is Genesis 6, the story?
that. Let me look up, because I don't want to paraphrase it, because
I think I can't paraphrase it. I couldn't do it justice.
no,
I wouldn't.
my phone's being retarded.
And it's funny, we're looking it up at the same time, and we're seeing who gets there faster. Boom.
When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of human were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thought of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And then it goes on to Noah and the flood.
So Genesis 6 is the start as to why the flood happened.
Yes.
And
where people get the Watchers, the Nephilim,
Yep.
and everything
Isn't it
else.
funny that the Russians just created a drone that fires a nuke into the ocean that causes a flood,
Poseidon.
and they happen to name it the Poseidon.
Mm-hmm.
Poseidon, also known for the floods, the storms.
Poseidon was an Elohim by a different name. So, and so here's it. I mentioned this on our show last night, and I told you I would explain it today, how I got in trouble. Okay, because I get in trouble a lot. So we do on our Sunday show, our Truspiracy show, when you came on for 9/11. We regularly do what we call a Kovacs special. We've been doing it since the very beginning of our show. I think the third episode we did was a Kovacs special with Deplorable Janet. And it kicked us off Spotify. It was like our first badge of honor. It was pretty amazing. But so we do it about every 3 or 4 months, quarterly. And this last one, I think we went like 5 months. So there was a lot of information to go over. So we basically we did 2 episodes, not quite consecutive. I think there was like 1 or 2 other Truspiracy in between. But in the space of a month, we spent 8 hours on Kovacs, right? On the jab and the effects and all of this. And after the second one was done, and the second one we specifically were looking at excess mortality and, dropping birth rates and all of these things, right? And essentially the death waves are here.
Right.
And that night, Gabriel showed up, and he was so mad at me because he told me that I had created a reality that they had not accounted for, where humanity would dwindle down to 180 million people and it was not sustainable. And I was like, so are you telling me that my theory is correct, that when you inform people about the possible, when you finally make people understand the negative effects of the jab, that they're going to become more sick because they're more accepting of it? Like it's, a psychosomatic thing on top of the physiological part. And he said, no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not it. You have actually manifested a reality where almost everyone is going to die. And I was like, no, you cannot blame that on me, because I have been trying to warn you for 1.5 years that this is what the jab is doing, that it's been disconnecting people from God at the genetic level, disconnecting them from the source. You said at the very beginning, We've done something and you didn't know what it was. And I tried to tell you then, I asked you then, is the jab disconnecting people from God? And you didn't answer my question then. And I've been trying to warn you about this for a year and a half now, and you've blown me off. And now we're here and you're going to shoot the messenger. Fuck you. Anyway, I've gotten to the point now where I have no problem cussing out an angel. Okay. In the first, the very beginning, I was scared.
Not just an angel, folks. Okay.
A warrior angel.
Let's talk about this real quick. No, this is literally the archangel Gabriel.
I know.
An archangel compared to a regular angel is.
You know what? I don't care. Obviously, I don't care, because if he chose me, then he's going to have to fucking listen to me. Why should I treat him any differently than anybody else?
He doesn't have to listen to you.
Well, he does if he wants me to do what he wants.
You can talk to God and say, she needs to go. Yo.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. But if he wants me to do whatever he wants me to do, then he's going to have to listen to me bitch about it if he doesn't tell me why.
But if you think about it in this aspect, when you're a warrior, okay, and someone challenges you on your warrior status to the point where you might, I think he looks at her with respect as she's a good human warrior. You know what I mean?
Well,
like, I'm not going to put up with shit.
As an equal.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not as an equal, but someone that can hang, like,
isn't afraid, because there's so few that aren't afraid of him. And I have no fear of anything. Honestly, after what we've been through, I have no fear of anything at this point. And we had our youngest son, because he went through multiple experiences with death, but I faced death as well, because I'm allergic to everything. I'm Rh negative, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But I'm allergic to all synthetics. I'm allergic to all painkillers, opiates, everything. And our son was almost 10 pounds and frank breech, and I was huge, and he wouldn't turn. So his head was up here, and his feet were here, and his butt was down here, and they had to cut him out of me. And since I'm allergic to everything, that presented some difficulties. So they gave me a beta blocker to cut me open and pull him out, and his head was so big that it actually got stuck, and he ended up inhaling amniotic fluid and ended up with infant pneumonia, and he came out like a 3 on the Apgar scale. He was blue. And when they do a cut and pull, then, they take all your innards out, and then they go to put them all back in. And when they put them back in, I could feel it, because I just had a beta blocker. I wasn't like completely dead legs or anything. Mm-hmm. I wasn't screaming in pain, but I was making a couple noises. I was like, And so they decided, against everything I had told them, to put me under, because I'm also malignant hypothermic. So my body temperature dropped to about 80 degrees, and I was in a coma for quite some time. And they almost killed me.
An hour.
Whatever.
It was an hour. Trust me.
Okay.
I was right there. I was like, they were like, don't you want to be with your son? I was like, no.
You told me an hour. You told me 3 hours. You told me 3 days. I have no idea. My whole concept of time was completely fucked up. I just know that when I woke up, my baby wasn't there, and I was pissed. And I insisted on getting out of bed and going to see my baby. But, I was like, I almost died then. And I have a purpose too. So, you know what? When it's my time, it's my time. Until then, I'm going to do whatever he asks of me. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to ask why in the meantime.
I don't blame
but I did come to realize and understand, because I was also shown what would have happened if something had changed, if something had been different, and that was a whole different matter. But before Justin died, we had been, especially at the border, we'd gone down to the border because he and Jason had been down there, and they had done some frequencies, some sound experiments with it. And they basically found that the border wall is a giant tuning fork. And Kofifi, I don't know if you know this, but Kofifi, CO is what? Copper?
No, cobalt.
Cobalt, and then vanadium and iron.
Iridium and iron and inadium, which is an actual atomic particle.
That's what the wall is made of, and that's what, that was the atomic
breakdown
formula when Trump put out Kofifi. Anyway, vanadium specifically is interesting because it has both anti-parasitic and healing effects. when presented with a certain frequency. And that was just fascinating. And so we were on this path where we were starting to investigate frequency and sound and healing with that. You know, there's been all these things about 5G and this, that, and the other. Well, if you can kill with a frequency, can't you also heal with a frequency?
Mhm.
Right? If you can, I mean, if certain minerals have detrimental effects, won't other minerals have healing effects? Right? We know
I
this.
think that's why how the pyramids were built with frequency.
Yes. And probably Stonehenge as well. And I mean, we know that there's ley lines and nodes under certain places. So we were really starting to look into that. And then Justin died and it kind of threw us off that path. And we took a very hard black pill. Or I did at least. We've been joking for the last few months that he's the hopium giver these days.
Wow, you went right for his cock.
I didn't mean to. Force a habit, I guess.
Hey, when it's that big, you know.
Oh, you're Irish, babe. It was just a lucky
I know.
Oh, the luck of the Irish, yeah.
cleansing blow. But so anyway, so I'm trying to get us back on that path, because if we can change the consciousness from one of death and despair to one of hope and healing, then maybe we can change that future reality that has manifested where everyone dies. Because I don't want that reality. I don't like that timeline.
Nobody does. Nobody does.
No. So, but yeah, it's been a crazy ride.
Yes, it has. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming on, telling me this story, because
How long has it been?
Almost 3 hours.
Yeah, almost 3 hours.
2.5, because we shot the shit for about 15 minutes first. Yeah.
I go big or go home over here.
Yeah, I guess so.
So
Go Ghost. Go.
I mean, we drop 3-hour shows on the regular, so it's, we talk a lot. It's not really a big deal.
But no, and like I said a little while ago, I knew of a little bit just from listening to the podcast, but I knew there was more to it, and I it's a hard story to tell, from your guys' standpoint, because
you have to look at it this way. You have to look at it this way. She has the biggest balls in the world, because I told her don't talk about this.
She
I was
teabag
like,
you.
Don't talk about this.
Yeah.
Yes, constantly, and I love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I motorboat the shit out of him.
He told me not to talk about it. He was like, if people think you're crazy, and I said, I don't care.
Don't talk about this, because this is going to be bad. We're gonna endure a lot of heat. We did too.
Actually, the first show that we ever did, we went on NY Patriot.
Good friend.
With Nick, who's also part of Occult Rejects, but this wasn't on Occult Rejects. This was just on NY Patriot. And it was literally right. I mean, it was like, 2 weeks after it happened?
Yep.
And that show was scrubbed from every platform except for, I think, Odyssey. Even Podbean took it down.
Really? And I was like, hey,
entirely scrubbed.
Don't talk about this. You're pushing something that you and I can't even fathom. And she went ahead and did it anyway. And so far, our last couple shows have remained up. So
yeah, even on YouTube, we did a Conversations on the Fringe where we guest hosted for Josh, and we told the story, and we got quite a bit more pushback on that one, because like our audience is loyal to us, and they've heard the story, or they've been with us as we've gone through it, so they've heard it in pieces as it's happened over the past year and a half. But I think that was probably the first time that we'd sat down and told the whole thing up to, almost now, all at once. So we, a lot of people were like, you're fucking crazy. And then some people were like, holy shit, so,
it's only supposed to resonate with a certain number of people, and only a certain number of people are supposed to understand it. So I don't hold anything against those who talk negatively about it. And I don't hold anything negative against any. I try not to hold any negativity at all, but I know that there's only a certain number of people who are supposed to hear this message, and hey, so be it. You're not a part of us. I get it. It's fine. Cool.
Take it or leave it. And if you want to take it, run with it.
And we've watched family, we've watched friends, we've watched other people who said, you're fucking nuts. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
We're nuts. Fine. I don't care what you say. You can say whatever you want. Oh, you're a fucking crackhead. Fine. Do it, please.
Yeah.
I beg of you. Please. Because I want to find a normal crackhead who sees some shit like that, because I guarantee you can find one.
I have learned to listen in the past year in a way I never thought was possible. And you know what set me off the first time, like that experience, that look that you had on your face after that recording was done, that feeling that you had, right? I didn't have that feeling for the first time when this started. I actually had it before then, at the very beginning of the pandemic, 2020. I woke up in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning, to the sound of a bell in my head. And it was the purest sound I'd ever heard in my life. Like almost a gong, like this deep resonating, beautiful bell. And I didn't know what the fuck it was.
Can I stop you there for a second? Because right around that same time, I would wake up, and this is going to sound stupid as fuck, because I wake up with random fucking songs in my head. Ring my bell. Was stuck in my head for months. And my wife would look at me, and I'd get up, and she's like, listen to the song. I'd be like, babe, I've listened to it. I can't get that song out of my head. Like, just random fucking songs. Just wake up.
Yeah.
There they are. And it was right around that time. It was about 2 years ago, give or take, maybe a little bit more. And it was like, I couldn't even remember who sang it. I think, is it Carly Simon?
Yes.
Probably.
Okay.
He's a big 80s fan. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm waking up with Ring My Bell in my head.
Yeah.
And you're sitting here saying, I woke up with a fucking bell just going
bell in my head.
Yeah.
And it happened a couple of times. And then one time I woke up to the sound of someone saying my name. And he was at the firehouse. So I knew it wasn't him. And the kids were dead asleep. And it always happened at like 3:00 in the morning. But it wasn't like, it was my name, but it wasn't the name that everybody every day calls me. It was my true name. Right. And that resonated with me in such a way, between that and the bell. And it happened over the course of about a month. I understood then that there was something bigger, something greater than us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something was trying to reach out to me. Something was trying to talk to me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to listen. It's something you have to learn.
It is.
Yeah.
Because I never used to like listening to fucking anybody fucking talk. And here I am, a podcaster.
Yeah.
And crave listening and talking to other people and giving other people with experiences like yours a platform to speak out. Now, granted, you have your own platform, way bigger than mine. However, it to me, this was a gift that was granted to me, because most stuff that I talk about and think about and believe in, or even just, it's a hypothesis. Oh, you're fucking crazy. Well, am I? Because there's a lot of us out there, and all we want to do is get to the fucking truth and get to the bottom of shit and try and figure shit out.
Yeah, I found a lot of people that have heard the bell, or have heard their name, or both. And I feel like one of my purpose at this time is to find those people like us that are a part of this and bring us together. In fact, I argued, because Gabriel wanted us to stop the podcast, stop the show, and I told him, oh yeah. I flat out told him, I said, no, because we only started this because God directed us to. Like, this wasn't our idea, right? We were told to stick a microphone on the side of a computer and start talking.
Mm-hmm.
He gave us this platform to spread this message. You can't take it away now when this is the most important message that we have to spread. You want me to find these people. I can't do it unless I have a voice, and I don't have a voice without our show.
That's funny you say that, because now I didn't hear a voice or anything, but I just felt like I needed to start a podcast. Drunk off my ass one night, reached out to Ryan Dean from Dangerous World Podcast. Drunk off my ass, right? Friday night, end of the work week, pounding some beers. Send a IG direct, hey, do you think you could help me start a podcast? Go to bed, pass out, wake up the next morning. Yeah, sure. Anything you need, man. Hit me up. Rest is fucking history. I was just like, holy fuck. And then, starting it, and then now coming into it, and it's like looking back on Telegram voice chats, then they became video chats and what have you. And you look back at how you were kind of prepared to do something like this, and to where you kind of come now. And I can't wait to see where it goes into the future. You know what I mean? Like, because
we are the news now.
We are.
Actually, I was sitting there, and I don't know if I would call it an epiphany of sorts, but I sat there one day. I was thinking about it. I was like, we had been talking for a while. Like, she would get pissed off with me. She would be like, you understand this shit like so much better than everybody else does.
Yeah, because we didn't hear a voice or anything like that when we started the podcast. Like, we both had the idea together organically.
Yeah,
that's why
it's just like one day,
we
we're going to do a podcast.
And we'd sit there and talk about what was going on, and I'd be like, oh my God, this is so stupid. And we'd be like listening to other people. And she was like, well, if you fucking hate it so much, let's do something about it. I was like, what do you mean? She's, let's start our own thing. Let's figure it out. And I was like, that's actually not half bad of an idea. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, because we could fill up an hour.
It was right after the election. Yeah. Oh yeah, we could fill up an hour.
Actually, we filled up like 2 on our first show, and we were like, fuck this, we're gonna do 2-hour shows from now on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Once a week, we're like, we'll do a pre-recorded show once a week, and then after a while, it was like, all right, there's so much going on. He's like, all right, we'll do 2 shows a week, but no more. That's it. Just 2 shows a week.
And here you are.
And here we
daily.
are doing 6 shows a week.
To where, like, it's kind of the point where I had to quit a job.
Yeah, because we podcast full time. I quit my job, but I quit my job over mandates, and I'm not going back because
Fuck them.
I like this better. Fuck them. So
Nice that
this is more
said
important.
that at the exact same time.
Yep.
Well,
So-
let my audience know where they can find you if they don't know by now. Where they can find the Patriot Party Podcast or your social media and what have you.
So the Patriot Party Podcast, we broadcast on Twitch, although we do not do replays on Twitch because when we get suspended, then they can't come back, But
I can't say, you've talked about this in the past.
Twitch, DLive, Rumble, CloutHub, redpills.tv. And then we're also on Cannabis in Combat. That was Justin's channel. We had already exchanged stream keys when he died. So we were keeping his channels alive as well as his brand with his father's
Under Grandiose
request.
Delusions.
Yes. So Cannabis in Combat on Roku, and soon will be on the Patriot Podcast Network as well. But yeah. So 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday for the news. We do about a 2.5-hour show every day, Monday through Friday for the news.
Live, you can come on,
live.
you can chat, you can comment, you can get yelled at, you can get congratulated. It just depends on the day.
And then Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern on all those same platforms for our Truspiracy show, which is, sometimes we talk about angel stuff. Sometimes we talk about whatever's, could be anything. Kovacs, transhumanism.
We have talked about everything.
Just about everything.
Have you talked about retarded boners?
As an individual topic,
we talk about retarded boners all the time.
I mean,
standard.
Like a boner that wants to get hard but doesn't know he wants to get hard.
Oh wow. No, that's a Viagra problem.
Okay.
Or sometimes a cocaine problem.
Yeah. That's an awful odd tattoo you have on your hand right there.
4 degrees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big tool fit.
I know.
There you go. All right.
That has a whole lot of demonic stuff in it. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 degrees, the all-seeing eye, demonic possession.
Look at my logo.
Yeah, I know.
There's 9 eyes staring at you.
And that is actually the last thing I want to address.
That's really funny that you just said that. There's 9 eyes staring at me. Yes. And what was the name of the last Security Council that met that said, hey, look, we're going to share classified information across several different platforms.
Yeah, 9 eyes.
With several different fucking nations. It was named 9 eyes.
But a lot of people, a lot of the pushback we get is how do you know that this isn't a demonic possession, right? How do you know this is angelic possession and not a demonic possession? And I know this because every time, and actually one thing I got in trouble for was for talking to Gabriel instead of talking to God. Okay. That I'm not to pray to Gabriel. I'm to pray to God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is what I'm told all the time, right? I can talk to Gabriel. I can ask him questions, but I do not worship Gabriel. I do not pray to Gabriel. That is reserved for God. This is what Gabriel tells me. If this was a demon, they would not be telling me to go worship God. I have come into faith in a way that I did not even understand was possible in the past year. I understand now what it means when someone's born again and when they literally feel the Holy Spirit bursting out of them and they can't contain it and they have to share it with everyone that they meet. I understand that feeling now. I understand where that annoying drive comes from. You know those people I'm talking about. They drive you fucking crazy.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's like when a conspiracy theorist first wakes up and realizes they've been lied to. They got to tell everybody.
Exactly. It's the same thing. If this was a demonic possession, he's a really bad demon because he brought me to God in a way that I never would have thought was possible.
Right.
So that's my answer to that. On social media, you can find me at Vlynn Q pretty much everywhere. Twitter, somehow I'm still on Twitter. Instagram, I think, is the Patriot Party Podcast. And Truth. We do have a Telegram chat as well, the Patriot Party Pod chat, or it might just be It's Patriot Party Pod chat, and that's a lot of fun over there too. So yeah, that's about it. But tune in every night, 6 p.m. Eastern for the news, and then Sundays at 2 p.m. Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Well, thank you guys both for coming on. Great pleasure as always. Love talking to both of you. Mick, thank you for sharing your story. And to my audience, until we talk again, think for yourself.